minds on this March day, and I hope that you enjoy tonight's presentation with our Grand Shiek, Taj Tarik Bey. Let's receive him.
You know, we just came from Kentucky. I want you all to just throw some good energy out. Tabir just called me because his son's in the hospital. So he's going to have to fly back in. He just flew in because we just left Kentucky. So anyway, put good energy out because you're co-creators anyway. But one of the things I wanted to share with you, a couple of people that I've had a conversation with in the past week before I went to Kentucky. And actually a few people from different organizations, and also a couple of scholars that came down to the lecture in Kentucky. And also talking with Dr. Nailah and then talking to my son, Dr. Hannibal. I decided to share the little black book with you all. And so at the last minute, I started typing it in. That's why you all saw me working it, because I have the book, but I wanted to, instead of reading it and expecting you to absorb it, I wanted to put some up. It's just a short book. And it's basically Islamic philosophy. And one of the reasons I want to show it to you is also in an antithesis position. With one of the conversations I had is I recognize some intelligent people are locked into tunnel vision. And but I also recognize that a lot of our people aren't taught the principles of philology that's actually in Asiatic African culture. And so this was perfect, particularly since Hannibal's been sharing some of the Lemurian and Corbett knowledge with you all, which is Adeptus information. I wanted to share this with you because it's a very short treatise, but at the same time, it's a fundamental tool that all scholars use and all priests would use. And although we won't have the time to do a total analysis of it, I want to present that it's very, very simple. But because our people have been trained generally in belief systems, they have a tendency to take what is called deductive reasoning from a challenging position because they're not often presented with it, all right? So as we go through this, I want you to take primal words out of it and do a little research, all right? But the major issue is very often when we're discussing issues, the social and anthropological social issues that we suffer under European colonial operations with others and with ourselves, we often sometimes have a tendency to get caught up in whatever organizations we may be associated with, and then don't get, sometimes losing sight, meaning that getting tunnel vision. And scholars are careful not to do that. And Moors who are conscious of Moorish science are taught and careful not to do that. But you also notice that many of them don't execute that principle. Are we clear? They operate with tunnel vision. And you know, it's where you get the attitude of people in belief systems, dogmatic belief systems, or judgmental of other people. They think that Allah made them, didn't make anybody else. They know Jesus, they got his personal cell phone number, he got an iPhone 10 and all that stuff. You know, and they respond to people with a sense of superiority, which is corrupt, totally corrupt. Understanding fundamental thesis, antithesis, and synthesis just gives you a perspective of proper critical thinking. It's a tool. It's a tool. And any properly educated person will, just like they get an Edamon degree in the 3rd grade, you know, would get fundamental thesis, antithesis, synthesis instruction, or what is called a tool for critical thinking based in a knowledge of divine law, how things work. Although there are no absolutes, you still build your own reality. And, I'll give you an example. Many of you who are social philosophers note that Prophet Noble Ali said, if I could get you all thinking again, you save yourselves. The statement goes standard in philology has to do with the observable knowledge that our people are caught in the dogmatic systems and they do not think objectively. There's another reason why I want to share this with you, because it's very simple. So don't get the idea, because I'm running my mouth, that it's complex. I just don't want you to put up your guard. You get the point? Just take it in, observe it, and then we're going to talk a little bit, all right? Do me a favor. Take it from the top. And also, this matrix problem is also in the book, and you're going to write this on your little paper, and you're going to connect all 9 dots with 4 lines without lifting the pen. All right, that's an exercise. 9, Dr. Nailah. Take it all the way to the top. Now when you're dealing with philology, and this is also part of the problem that we have, and me and Brother Dendiz was actually talking the other day, and a little bit today too. We must understand, aside from the karmic and dharmic principles that caused our fall, the ancient Canaanites, Moabites, our modern name is Moor. That's just short for Amrakim, descendants of the ancient Canaanites, Moabites. Egypt, or as Hikupta, which is proper, is the capital dominion of the Moroccan Empire. As you know, in the social political dispensation that's taking place now, I reminded you all, some of the things that Barack H. Obama has done. Now you got to understand the positives and negatives on all sides. And so there's certain things that are taking place on the political realm that actually have sort of like, we know that spirit is breathing techniques, all right, spirituality. On the etheric plane and on the transmutation of the energies from the Piscean energy lords into the Aquarian energy lords. As you know, Hex Alpha, symbolic of above, so below, the Hermetic law. When you have a background in philology and cultural sciences, you can see things in things that people say and do that sometimes people who don't know, it goes over their heads and they totally miss it. Do you understand? While there are dynamics that Obama has to deal with the transition, because certain things are sacrificial. When you understand divine law, you understand when you see certain works of sons of destinies and daughters of destiny. Doesn't mean that they themselves, as an individual energy, is absolutely positive. But whatever the mark or the mother brings through the stargate, there's a deed to be done. You also have to work those things out yourself. However, no one's all good and no one's all bad in the sense that we look at it. But the greater for us all is to have a comprehension on how to look at it. It's quite difficult because in the physical realm, in the carnal realm, we have tendencies to shell up. One of the keys to the releasing of the karmic debt that we create, because we're co-creators of our existence, is to learn how to step outside the box, as we might say. Step outside the matrix. But do it with a knowing as opposed to just being haphazard. This is another reason why I wanted to share this lesson with you. Because it's a very simple lesson, but if you use the tool, you can be liberated on many fronts, all right? So I just wanted to share that with you. So, in the principle of divine law or divine principle philosophy, there shall be no secularism in truth. Are we clear? Thus, there shall be no secularism in Islam. For those who don't, on the surface, necessarily quite get or clarity on what I just said, because they know the political systems as they operate, where the Europeans classify themselves under the Christian banner, and all the other Asiatics of the world under the banner of Islam. Has nothing to do with whether they're Buddhists, Confucius, they're all listed as Muslims in the real world. I wanted to say this too so that you don't confuse what I'm saying. Muslim does not mean a belief system. Muslim is a fetus that comes from the womb of woman. Muscles, tissues, electrical system formated by energy formation in a reality created in her mind through her womb, slowing down to a vibrational force that manifests in the physical realm, like a wave, and all things operate on wave length, like on a wave. And so the expression of the being is the attempt of the being to express the energy, or what we might call the spirit, in a sense of individuality which can never truthfully happen. Are we clear? The issue is to comprehend that and to understand that, while at the same time not condemning yourself for trying to express yourself. Are we clear?
Clear.
It's sort of like the reality that no one stands alone, no one is the one alone by itself. And so, psychologically, being co-creators, we seek to draw a line or a circle around ourselves so that we can be manifest and say that I am, that I am, that I am. This is our attempted expression. And we try it over and over again, and often, logically, it's not successful. But you do it until the energy wanes, and then you just transform into another energy, but you do not dissipate. The form dissipates. The consciousness does not. The consciousness is what we call the divine, or the sun, or the Ra, or the Gilliam, or the Allah, or the All. So I wanted to share this with you because whether someone is in the orders of Islam or in the orders of Christianity in the Orthodox form, we're not talking about the dogma form set up by Constantine for world control. Do not confuse the two. Are we clear? And do not confuse dogmatic Islam that you see practiced by many people that has heavy negative suppressive aspects to it. Because people call it Islam, it's dogma. Truth is one all over the planet. Are we clear? They may call it a different name, but again, like say for instance, if you understand the rules of life and the fundamentals of truth, you know if you're dealing with what they call Islam on its religious scale, not just the creed scale, but on its scientific scale, you would have no compulsion or no hesitance to leave your child with an Orthodox Christian because you know that Orthodox Christian is not going to feed that baby pork. Do you understand? Same thing with someone who claims to be a Jew, because the truth is one. Now, when you get into people that are dealing with dogmata, they have what you call political doctrines. And so they make up clubs, and this is for the priesthood to protect their economic base in these little sheeple corrals. Those are called sects. And the masses are caught up in the sects. That's S-E-C-T-S. And most sects do not really teach religion. They teach dogma. It doesn't mean that they're terrible people. It doesn't mean that the imams, rabbis, and priests don't know these things, because they absolutely do to get their degrees. Point is that most of them are more selfish than they are loving. So they perfect the art of looking like they love, and perfect the art of robbing the widow's pennies. This is where the lessons where you see in the Septuaginta, where Jesus is debating with the priesthood and the money changers, stealing the widow's pennies, using religion as a front, and that is the typical that goes across the planet. It's another reason why I wanted to share this lesson with you, keeping things simple, right? So I won't burden you with it. We'll go through this and then take certain key pieces of information, take notes, etc. And as you know, because it's basic philology, we won't have time to go through all of this tonight, but in your own time. And what I wanted to do, I wanted to print this out so that I can later share this with you. For those who want it, we can print them off, and you can have a copy just for yourself. But in doing so, what you can do, like say, for instance, you can take this fundamental, what we would call critical thinking tool. You can apply it to the Bible, the Quran, Uaswi, the Vedas, Upanishads, Torah, Tanakh, Pentateuch, any of the holy books, because they're universal, truthfully, and to all of the sciences. So let's have you all participate. And so someone read until you're tired, and then share it with someone else. Islam. And get in the mic. Or you can sing too.
No, I was getting it for some. No.
Good. Islam.
Islam. Moors Order of the Round Table. Islam equals I, self, law, and master. Islam equals I, self, law, and master. Okay. Let me go back. Islam equals I, self, law, and master. Islam equals I, self, law, and master. Islam equals I, self, law, and master. Know thyself. Thesis plus antithesis equals synthesis. A Moorish science adept lesson dealing with fundamental truths of all Moorish Americans. The unconditional heirs of the North Gate. First, we will share with the neophytes, scholars, and adepts alike the definitions of some of the primal words shared within this Adaptus treatise. In particular, we will define thesis, antithesis, and synthesis. Thesis, a noun, is a proposition such as proposition such as one advanced by a candidate for an academic degree that is maintained by argument. A thesis is also a dissertation advancing an original point of view as a result of dedicated research, especially as a requirement for an academic degree. It is also a hypothetical proposition, especially one that is put forth for the sake of argument or one to be accepted without proof. The first stage of dialectic. Dialectic is the art of arriving at the truth by disclosing in an opponent's argument and thereby overcoming them. Dialectic is also the process of change whereby an ideational entity, thesis, is transformed into its opposite, which is antithesis, and preserved and fulfilled by it. The combination of the two being resolved in a higher form of truth. And this is known as synthesis. And so we look at synthesis as the combining of separate elements or substances to form a coherent whole. In philosophy, synthesis relates to reasoning from the general to the particular. Therefore, we consider the exercising of logical deduction. And upon the application of logical thinking and critical analysis conjoined with deductive reasoning, one can realize the cognition associated with the combination of thesis and antithesis into synthesis. In this treatise, we will share and analyze these aspects via the reading of Alden Taylor's work called The Little Black Book, Just Another Reality, published in the year 1987. The Little Black,
Yeah.
The Little Black
Somebody
Book.
else wants to, go ahead, Keith.
Okay. Just Another Reality forward. Hundreds of years ago, a Sufi master stated that the value of a book is in what it does, not what it says.
Read that again.
Hundreds of years ago, Sufi master stated that the value of a book is in what it does, not what it says. Ultimate reality is all that is energy. Consciousness is. Our being conscious of being conscious is not consciousness. Our individual consciousness is in evolution. Consciousness is out of time and space, while being conscious individually creates the illusion of time, space, and separateness. Thought is reality one. In a schema of thought, reality, there exists reality one by some exponential value that becomes consciousness. The inevitable oneness realized in complete immersion with the is consciousness. Thinking is destiny. Every atom in the physical world, every thought formed in the unmanifested sphere is a product of thought activity. Thinking is thought activity. Unconscious and subconscious processes are also thought activities. Selecting and owning all of our thought activity is being conscious of creating our reality. Choosing reality is the mission of life, each life. The individual is a facet in the one mind, the is consciousness. You are the world, a world unto yourself, and a co-creator to individualize other worlds. Reality is relative. Just as no two people can possibly observe exactly the same incident, no two people can share the same simultaneous physical reality. Illusion rests in consciousness, in consensus. To agree to accept a reality is to create/co-create a reality based on this expectation. Illusion authors purpose. Purpose claims absolutes. Thus constructs such as karma and dharma are born. Right and wrong, sin and piety, good and evil, etc., become the score measurement for purpose. Purpose is illusion. Truth is consciousness is truth. Transcendence is escaping illusion. Is that guiding? Guiding oneself up to and for others is rising beyond the limitations of self-boundaries. Direction, parenthesis purpose, is in consciousness. There is consciousness that transcends the being conscious of being conscious. Thought is often confined by trained expectation. Genius is thought outside confinement. Inspiration is thought without processing. In an instant, a flash of knowing occurs, and as a result of thought, there exists a simultaneous realization of the occurrence, usually for purposes of communication. Thinking in the real sense convolutes the models. One gets out of the process of thinking to get into the dimension of thought. A simple example of this out-of-model can be expressed in the classical 9-dot matrix problem. Connect all the dots with 4 straight lines without lifting your writing instrument from the page. Every single aspect of the physical, including the biological you, is fundamentally a wave form manifested in large according to expectation. The collective expectation is the collective unconscious of Jude, or Joan.
Yeah.
The collective unconsciousness is not the is consciousness. Rather, it is an aspect of the thinking patterns and processes of mind individualized. A reservoir of electromagnetic resonance existing at different harmonic levels. There is a synergistic effect to thinking patterns. This is why the form transcends the limitations of the particular. Ultimately, each and all of all is light. Waveform manifests from the light electromagnetic continuum into the physical. This is what is meant by Maya, or illusion. The proposition is not to deny the physical, opting for otherworldly over this worldly, but to see the illusion. Seeing the illusion, physicality, for what the illusion can free one from the limited expectation, inherit this implied paradox. All thought is waveform. Only waveform exists. Thus thinking is destiny. The law is thought. The law operates from unconditional love. Nothing exists except that is a gift. The first cause gifted individual expression to unformed thought. Thought took up thinking, and thus the individual evolution of aspects of being in consciousness began. If the individualized manifestation is less than unconditional love, oneness with all, then the particular remains but a shadow of the form thinking exists until it becomes thought in the is consciousness. By convoluting models, paradoxes are found. Thesis, antithesis, synthesis. The middle path, the mid-pillar, the sought-after balance is found. The secret of mastery is moving, thinking, from the take to the give. Expectation move. Unconditional giving is divine. Destiny presupposes future. Future is illusion. Thinking becomes thought when emulating the divine. The evolution of being conscious becomes the is consciousness when the I becomes one. Unconditional love is giving not from the I perspective, but from the this is indeed when the Father and I become one. The only philosophy in life that endures beyond the physical is what is, I call 3 R's. All reality is built upon relationships, even the collective unconscious, or collective expectation that holds the waveform in a continuum of manifestation and thus produces the physical world. is a relational interaction. Our reality, therefore, is first, last, and always only relative to our relationships. The philosophy is simple. Relative, relationship, reality is all there is. Know this, and you know all.
Slime.
Give brother a hand. Now that's fundamental philosophy, and anyone that studies true religion gets this lesson too, with others like that. This is why you see, in spite of what people say, you see Europeans, particularly in politics, who are ruling the planet, why they have Korans. Because the philosophy is universal, but politics is separate. In other words, just because they have a different agenda, they don't reject knowledge. That's why they're ruling the world. Are we clear?
Clear.
And this is to encourage you to use the books wisely and with love and with not an evil intent. And this is why one of the keys to getting outside of the box is learning to give instead of always taking. Are we clear? This is an operation of nature. It has nothing to do with what your belief systems are. Are we clear?
Clear.
This is why even though the Europeans do a whole bunch of mean stuff, they always practice philanthropy at the same time. If you get the point. But I take some of these major points and do some research on your own time. All right, but I wanted to share that with you. And this is projected out to some people I was talking to the other day. I didn't tell them I was going to do this, but I'm just projecting it out, you know. And also, hopefully, that we can all benefit from this. Now, I want you to also recognize that a lot of times when, as we're evolving out from under the Roman yoke, you know, Rome in their operations has the benefit of controlling the resources. And so they will always pay what you will call, even though it's a misrepresentation, the Judas factor, as they tell it in the Bible, it's a misrepresentation because actually it was another person with a similar name to Judas Iscariot that is actually Jesus' friend, if you get the point. And he has actually got a bad rap, if you get the point. But the point of it is, among us all are persons who will sell out cause for the club or for a payoff. And in military operations, this is called schism. Write that down. SCHISM. What our people loosely refer to on a constant basis as divide and conquer, the military operations of its actuality in the philosophy of social engineering is called schism and schismata. And that's what the European uses. And that's how they refer to the divide and conquer techniques used in engineering and applied to people of the land, distinguished from the corporate operatives or the U.S. citizens who are protected by subdivisional agencies, etc., that our people loosely refer to as white supremacy doctrines. Are we clear? This is so that they're not poisoned by the mistreatment the way that you are. Now, the deal of it is, I wanted to remind you of certain fundamental principles so that when we're talking about analyzing the politics, so that you can understand why we always show you the diametrics, so that people can have an understanding, because you can think and create in your mind forces that are natural to counter Rome. That will be your defense. It's an abstract, if you get the point. And so when the Europeans, when the Romans overthrew the Republic, which is derived from Muslim law, they set up the U.S. democracy platform. That's a diametric opposition. And so that you can analyze and do rational thoughts to counter Rome, because that's the mission that you have right now. You have other missions in your individual charts, but there's an override, not pushing it aside, but for humanity at large. And your charge is to overcome the poison that Rome has done for the last couple hundred years. And some people who do a little philosophical studies have presented themselves with the concept that they can rise to the fifth and sixth dimension, etc., from an ascended concept, when the deal is you ain't going nowhere until you solve your lessons here. And for those who don't solve their lessons in this dimensional form, there's two things. Your energy can be dispensed, or you can return. Now, the issue that we have at this particular time in this Aquarian energy is that we can't say that we know, but the energy kind of reads like you're not going to have a lot of opportunities to do it again this time. Meaning that on a larger scale, for the families on the planet, if you don't evolve, there'll be decisions made whether or not you will continue even in other areas. Because the energy reads that we cycled enough, that we should have kind of ascended. And those who, because you can't exactly call it evil in a sense, but those who have not learned the lessons, but who know the philosophy of the return may not get that option. And that's just a point that I've been looking at, another reason I wanted to share this with you, for some who may not have some of the tools, that might just help a little bit, But trust yourself. Trust your thoughts. I want to share with you, let me see. Myself and the Antithesis, we were talking a little earlier, and I want to share with him also Rex 84, King Alfred. Now, some of the things that Rome is doing is because, and keep this in mind, all of the priesthood, all politicians are high priests. This is another thing that I remind you of. So don't look at the priesthood as just those who stick behind the pulpit. The priesthood is simply a pretty much corrupt order on the planet, period. There are very few of the priesthood that are really doing honorable things for the people. One of the keys to their protections is that the people have not suspected them. And also, this is one of the keys as to why the corruption on the earth has taken such deep roots, and it is so strong and so prevalent, and so, as you might say, appearing to be formidable. However, with your thought waves in a positive and being willing to step out of the box, that is the key, or the power that Rome can't overcome. Because you have the most powerful weapon on the planet, it's called truth. And Noble Drawley reminded you all of that. So that's another reason why I wanted to share this lesson with you, to encourage you to be confident in some of the keys that he left us, and not get caught up in the personality, but listen to the words, because he gave us a lot of keys. I also want to share this, and then we look at the dialectic, and we look at the thesis and the antithesis, and then we come with the synthesis. This is why it's important for you to know history and law, because you must make a balance. This is even when you look at the Peru principle of the scales of justice. You see the scales of justice? The Peru, that balances what you seek. Not the basket to the left, not necessarily the basket to the right, but the balance between. This is the key when they talk in philosophy, say moderation is the key. That's actually what it means, if you really kind of get it. I want to share, let me see. And this is important for all of you. And this is also, again, to the point where we must take our responsibility, like when Raleigh says, take your places amongst the affairs of men, is that we must take responsibility for our thoughts, for our actions. And then you must also have an idea of the past in order to have a comprehension of what you are to do in this day and time. Then this,
Yes.
and I want to hit on the military operations of the King Alfred Plan. And also I want to just make a couple of notes, and you look at the diametric oppositions to what you would call justice, and it also the diametric opposition to fair play. This is an exotic map of the U.S. Now, we're not going to go into that, but this will give you all of the actual cities that are on the center of the continent. And the reason why they focus on Turtle Island in the military operations, because this is the heartland of the Moroccan Empire, which they conquered. And it's important for people that run government and people in military to understand the true logistics distinguished from the masses. And so this is why this is essentially top secret, although it was grafted off of one of the computers that they sold in Arizona when they sold those old plane parts and stuff. But they were supposed to be white. And they were European that got this off, you know, they disappeared them. We know that they locked them up, but, you know, they disappeared them. And much of it was redacted, and much of it was repaired over the years. But again, it'll give anyone some insight into the actual political operations, and logically, where it is not in our interest to, let me see. It's not in our interest to be passive while certain things are going on. But I want to make certain things now cognate to you, because I already know that you'll probably integrate some of the thoughts in some of your other work and make certain adjustments too. You know what I mean? But the things, as we talked about earlier, you know, scholars know this information, but at the same time, for our people to be caught up in the dynamics that they practice of arguing racism and colors is actually a diversion from the reality of what they should be dealing with. It's sort of like you're mad at somebody, so you keep talking about their grandma wears high-heel green sneaks, when really they're stealing your bike and they stole your bank account and stuff like that, and you need to be dealing with the reality.
Yes.
And not your emotionalism. You know, we need to deal, because this is really what's happening to our people. You know, and so they really need to deal with what's happening to them, not how they feel. You know, King Alfred. So you go into European history, and you'll do a little research on King Alfred, and you'll start seeing his relationship with the Moors. And so you'll understand why the European picks certain names for their military operations. They will always pick something in history, whether it's a place, a person, an operation. It will have a cognate or numerical value relative to realities of cause and effect activities between the Occidentals and the Orientals. Are we clear? So no matter what we think in our politics, when Europeans are dealing with you, and it's not intended to be negative, it's just what it is. Their position is Christian versus Muslim. And you can say whatever you want to say, you can claim whatever you want to claim. That's how they're approaching you. Are we clear? And so certain things that they do that we may consider negative are political necessities, not necessarily predicated on whether they like you or not. Are we clear? And those of the Europeans that fail to carry the tow line, they will disappear them. Are we clear? But I want to make this point to you in relationship to persons amongst us who insist on pretending that they don't understand the real politics. So if they're sitting around talking about racism, they're keeping you off of what the energy that you really should be projecting your counter move to in the mental realm in order to co-create a counter move on the abstract plane to present a ridge or wave to counter the dark priesthood, because that's how it's done mentally. Are we clear? Not always physically. So just because you appear to be unarmed don't mean that you're unarmed. So don't get convinced that you're unarmed because they have all the hard weapons. The deal of is the divine is commanding for you to dig the deepest within yourself and bring out that energy of your ancient mothers and fathers, where you do use thought form to counter things. What you've got to not think negative while using it, because it will bounce back on you. Are we clear? All right, just as a synopsis, and then this, I want you to notice this. So when others come to North America from other nation states, and when Europeans are dealing with us, they're dealing with this fundamental reality regardless of where our mentality is. All right? So these are infiltrated organizations, and they don't understand all the organizations are infiltrated. Are we clear? Yeah. So, but I want you to pay attention to the politics so that you do not get in the illusion that because Europeans don't talk this openly, that they're not thinking this, or that they don't operate from this perspective. This is so you don't misjudge them, all right? Because our people have a tendency to misjudge them or think that they got to prove something to them. They already know. You're the one who's been asleep.
You know.
You know what I mean? Anyway, infiltrated organizations under surveillance. 1, the Black Muslims. 2, Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. That's called SNCC. I want to pull this up so that make sure that y'all get a good read of this. But I want you all to pay attention to this and pay attention to the dynamics. 3, Congress of Racial Equality. 4, Uhuru Movement. 5, Group on Advanced Leadership Goal, Freedom Now Party, the United Black Nationalists of America, the New Pan-African Movement, the National Urban League, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, Committee on Racial and Religious Progress, which is CORA, etc. Now, I want you to also note this, and keep this in mind when you start measuring all of the multiple organizations that operate in our community in the name of rights, in the name of Afrocentricity, supposed to be uplifting our people. And it's sort of like if you hire someone to fix something and next year they're still telling you keep hope alive and you see no change, but you're still expending energy, you got to start thinking that maybe you're out to lunch. Or maybe the person is not the carpenter, the electrician, the plumber, the fixer, the mechanic that they're claiming to be. And that their mission is to fleece you, not to fix you. We have a tendency not to look at things that way while others do. Therefore, we have a tendency to keep passing the next generation to less and less resources by draining our resources, promoting institutions and organizations that fix absolutely nothing. But make us feel good emotionally, but fix nothing because they're not directed to fix anything. And we need to accept that reality. But pay attention to these 2 paragraphs and look at the paradox, look at the thesis, look at the antithesis. And then consider synthesis from an analytical position and think how to project from your mind cures or fixes. All right? Note, at the appropriate time to be designated by the president, the leaders of some of these organizations are to be detained only when it is clear that they cannot prevent the emergency. Working with local public officials during the first critical hours, all other leaders are to be detained at once. Compiled lists of minority leaders have been readied at the National Data Computer Center. It is necessary to use the minority leaders designated by the president in much the same manner in which we use minority members who are agents with central and federal, and we cannot, until there is no alternative, reveal King Alfred in all its aspects. Minority members of Congress will be unseated at once. This move is not without precedent in American history. The Attorney General. Pay attention to this next paragraph. Preliminary memo, Department of Defense. This memo is being submitted in lieu of a full report from the Joint Chiefs of Staff. That report is now in preparation. There will be many cities where the minority will be able to put into the street a superior number of people with a desperate and dangerous will. He will be a formidable enemy, for he is bound to the continent by heritage, and knows that political asylum will not be available to him in other countries. The greatest concentration of the minorities in the Deep South, the Eastern Seaboard, the Great Lakes region, and the West Coast. Now, this is only one page of quiet wars, i.e. silent weapons for quiet wars. But you see the policy of the politicians. You understand why commercial mercenaries who are contracted members of the gangs of New York under the platform calling themselves police officers will murder people on the street with no recompense. It's not racism, it's policy. Are we clear?
Clear.
Now, deal over this. I want you all to pay attention to this again, and then I want you all to feel free to respond on what you thought was distinguished from what actually is. He will be a formidable enemy, for he is bound to the continent by heritage, and knows that political asylum will not be available to him in other countries. How many of our people keep on talking about they're going to Africa on the other side and other places and wonder why the Asiatics on the other side accept them as brothers and sisters, but tell them, just like that French Muslim told Malcolm, to you, Maghrib is Wednesday's Salat or evening Salat. To the rest of the world, Maghrib is Morocco, the most extreme west. You left home, brother.
Wow.
Don't come here with that white and black stuff. A lot of Europeans know more Islam than you'll ever know. Rude awakening, and that's also part of Malik's life that they don't often talk about, except in private circles, but they don't talk about it in the movies and amongst those who, for certain causes and coins and political reasons, assassinated his character to prepare him for elimination. Because they knew he was going to tell when he found out, because they could not buy him off. He had more integrity than most of the other people around him claiming Islam. And so it was them, even with Rome together, that assassinated Malik. Assassinating his character first, too, if you get the point. But the deal was one of the rude awakenings he found out is that everybody knew that these people are home. And they keep on talking in the name of Afrocentricity, we're going back to Africa, and they're standing on Africa. And everybody knows it but us. And all the so-called black scholars knew this all the time, too. And even those who had this document will sit around and talk about racism and color rather than talk about what the real problem is, that the people are suffering under unum sanctum policy. And that they're home, they can't be deported. And they need to direct their thought energy into solving the problems here, because that's their charge. However, because they don't know that they're home, they have this mentality of what you call disconnect. And so they suffer disassociation. So logically, because it's in violation of nature, they go into depression. Therefore, you have a lot of broken families, broken spirits, broken people. This is what allows an opening for the European Romans to enter their aura and feed them drugs. That's what the pharmaceuticals are for. That's just a point of reference to understand from a spiritual, what you call spiritual connect, how dark priesthood work and how they use knowledge to the negative, because it can be used positively or negative, because the sun shines on the good as well as the evil. But it's easier for them to get malleable people who are dealing with belief systems and not reality, and they can feed on them. And this is how they feed on you. So I wanted to look at this and then see the paradox of the thesis and the antithesis. So you come to the synthesis. What is the balance? Therefore, you must need critical thinking, and you must have an idea of how to use that critical thinking. But you want to keep negative out of your mind while doing it. And then nature answers you. And this is where you see in the Septuagint or the Bible when it says, just open your mouth and I will speak for you. Because when the more honest you try to be, the more selfless you try to be, the closer you are to nature's Akashic energy.
Yes.
Because all is energy. And she just simply reattaches the wires. Because all things that take place in this particular Gaia sphere is electrical charge, and it doesn't go away. It surrounds the earth. And some people call it Nirvana, Akashic records, etc. And this is why Yeshua would say things like, as I am, all men can be, what I've done, all men can do, and some of you will do greater works than I've done. Which means you don't get caught up in the personality, you get caught up in the word, in the knowledge. And so we came to demonstrate to you your own potential. And all that is what? The dichotomy of comprehension of thesis, antithesis, synthesis, balance.
Yes.
This is why in Buddhism they teach you balance. Confucius, and even in your nationality cards, when they said we honor all divine prophets, Confucius, Buddha, you see? Jesus, Muhammad. Now, a lot of people don't understand that. People who don't understand that are people who are caught in the box. You see? But his message is for humanity. And so what he's telling you is some of your keys are in all of those boxes. Go and get them. And don't get confined, because the philosophies are universal. Therefore, he's directing you to maxims.
Yes.
Are we clear?
Clear.
And so the more maxims you know, or that if you have the more honest priests, imams, rabbis, who would really be honest with you, and sheiks and grand sheiks, they would tell you these lessons because the prophet gave them to them. However, they hold them back for selfish cause. And this is why usually when people start liberating the people, they already have a cadre of trolls that immediately come out. You know, it's personal, but it isn't personal. Because as you learn these fundamental rules, you'll be able to see through them. As a matter of fact, you'll see them coming. You know, and then you can put a ridge wave before them. So whatever they plan for you, you just simply give them a mirror and they accept their own gift. You know, this is where Jesus, when he says turn the other cheeks, is really a mental mirror from the pineal gland. So when somebody brings you poison, you know, good man, oh, thank you. You can have it right back. This is where they don't want you to go, because you do have defense mechanisms, just that you gave up the principles of your ancient mothers and fathers, started following after the idol gods of Rome and lost your way. That's all wrong. That's all that's wrong. And if you just think and be honorable and start being willing to come outside the box, you solve your own problems. Therefore, Drawley said, if I could get you all thinking again, you would save yourselves. All right? So that's just another reason I wanted to share that lesson with you, so you can see the correlations in some of the statements that he made. And that when he's talking Islam, he ain't talking about spooky hallelujah to you, salami baloney. He's talking philosophies, maxim philosophies. Are we clear? Also, just as a reminder, you know, when you'll see people that have this knowledge, we'll talk about they're racist, and we're 90% of the people in the prisons and stuff like that, and what we need is justice and blah, 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 blah. No, they're 90% in the prisons because they're POWs. They're under occupation. Get over yourself. Are we clear?
Clear.
The deal of it is their trolls are paid to keep you arguing racism so that you don't argue international law violations, human trafficking, peonage, and piracy, which is the issue. Are we clear? This is again why, so I'm just reminding you, a lot of times when we're talking things that on their reflective surface, specific, they have a spiritual component. One of the reasons why I focus on that for so many years, because I already know that these people, unless they defeat Rome, they ain't getting past that, because he's holding the grail. In other words, he's at the gate. And these people keep punking out, talking about their idol gods who they believe in and stuff like that. And that's an excuse because they're running. While claiming to don't fear nobody but Allah, don't fear nobody but Jesus and God. No, they fear that European. But they need to be made aware that that European is their test in this third dimensional plane. And because the earth is shifting into the futon belt, you don't have a lot of options to keep playing around with this thing. And they can call resets and a whole bunch of other stuff. They can call Nibiru and everything else they want to talk about. The real deal is you're dealing with a heavy energy shift.
Yes.
You know. And everything that is must prove itself. That's what it is. In other words, whether you got a sign out there saying that you're a surgeon, you better know the anatomy of the body, and them scalpels better not be rusty. Not because I said so, because divine law says so. So whatever you claim, you're going to have to prove it now. And this is, I think, by people not knowing the truth of culture, don't understand the greatness of the Aquarian light, but also the dreadful side of the Aquarian light with Saturn. In other words, reapeth what you soweth. Mm-hmm. If you get the point, like for realist. Now these are, and many of these are women's prisons and forts. The reason they never close the forts, etc., and the prisons, while they may close them, they still have managed occupation because they're all being prepared to eliminate the heirs of the estate, i.e. you. And so our people need to get over themselves and stop deluding themselves that they're not prisoners of war, because they absolutely are. Are we clear? Yes. And so you're going to have to learn some things absent of hostility, but intelligence, in order to start protecting yourself and your family, and you're going to have to start doing some things realistically. Now you have Asiatics from around the world that are coming to your aid, that whether you know it or not, or whether you believe it or not, it's not the point of just informing you that you do. Then they're dismantling the dark priesthood of the European idol gods, or what you call demos or demigods. It's called the U.S. democracy. That's their political platform. And so this is, again, when you see the high priest of the Pope and the bishopric, which we remind you, and I don't want to be redundant, the letter that he did, the motu proprio, in 2013, and then the backup with the letter to Obama. That's what that's all about, because they're being dismantled. And so our people really need to be aware of the actual politics so that they can complete their missionary work in this third dimensional degree. Because you're going to be charged to fix this thing. Because that's why most of you are here, truthfully, because you're here at this time because you're charged with fixing it. So just in case, some of you already know it, but just in case you didn't know it, I'm just reminding you. Because there's going to be distractions, all right? So these are concentration camps. Don't be afraid, only if you don't intend to do right. All right? Those are broken into regions. Those are directives. All right? Now, and what they plan to do is, because the energy of the sun, the hybrids, because the Europeans are heterogeneous hybrids, the energy that's hitting the planet right now. It's another reason why they're doing chemtrails. It's not just that they're putting lithium in heavy metals in it to make you sick. It's also to kind of block some of the sun rays because of the energies that's hitting the earth right now. The form that the European has does not do well on the earth plane because it's not a natural form, because he's a hybrid. Don't use that knowledge from a negative because it's just simply the truth. So the chemtrails that they're using has multiple purposes. One, to create sickness, but two, to also shield from the sun rays and also from the energy rays that's in the particular Fruton belt that will take that body out that he has. Are we clear? So you got to look at it that way. And but again, because they have, as you already know, any of you who are scholars know that the Europeans' expurgatorious programs have put the world back over 500 years. And even though they have back engineered some of the technologies, etc., and are essentially a couple hundred years ahead of the masses, they still don't have it all. Are we clear? You're getting it will be your attachment to the Akashic record because you already know it just needs to be awakened. It is not unlike an egg that hatches. It doesn't have to be made, it has to be hatched. And so your DNA from a mathematical and geometrical principle has to be awakened. So the energy that will be hitting you will be waking you up to things that you thought you didn't know. However, you'll have a heads up by having some of the tools, or thought tools. There's another reason why I'm going to share that with you. I don't want to burn you with that, but I just want to give you a little insight on why I wanted to bring that thesis, antithesis, critical thinking, dialectic to you. Again, these are the regions. They break it up in regions. And also, I want you to pay attention to this. And this is, as you already know, September 30th, the Manchurian Masons told the dark priesthood of the West that they weren't going to buy any more of those bonds. And because many of the nation states have them in their treasuries, meaning that usually average around 55%, they have to kind of reasonably build this thing down, if you get the point. This is what they're calling the reset. And the Bitcoin thing, the cryptocurrencies are actually a reflection of the spiritual war. All right? Although some may stay, some may not, but the deal of it is the dark priesthood is being dismantled. So as above, so below.
Islam.
Yeah. All right. Now, so again, sometimes when we remind you to stop calling the fiat money, you want not to do that because the deal of it is by you being creators, pro-creators, when you call it money, you actually give the European life. You give the dark priesthood life because you're not, just because you're heirs of the estate, but because what you say be. Thought wave. And so when you call the fiat money, he knows that he trained you for that so that you would do that, and that buys him time. Because he knows that our people do not know the power of words. And they don't respect that word because they haven't been given an Edamon degree. All right? This is why they focus on pumping belief systems on our people so we can feel comfortable with placebos. And the real work is science. Are we clear? Mathematics. So I'm going to read this, and then I want you also to, if you want to interject, you go ahead and do so. Energy. Energy is recognized as the key to all activity on earth. Do you see this is a political platform. Do you see the synergism?
Yes.
In the thesis, antithesis, Synthesis.
Yes.
Now, do you understand the divine and national movement? Now, you understand law and history goes together?
Yes.
Once you're able to think, someone can't fool you because you understand the rules of how things work. You see? Therefore, you must know the constitution of things. Now, you understand why you have a chart? So that your biases don't get interjected. You look at the math, the geometry, because that don't lie. And then you match it to the salts to even look at how your sicknesses potentials are, or sicknesses that may be with you. So you know the foods. All right? I'm just throwing that at you. You know, giving you fundamentals to think. Use your brain. Energy is recognized as the key to all activity on Earth. Natural science is the study of the sources and control of natural energy, and social science theoretically expressed as economics. Y'all got it?
Yes.
Let's repeat that because I want y'all to get this together because we got to fix some things, including securing this house this year so we can get on to some other things. Are we clear?
Clear.
Energy is recognized as the key to all activity on Earth. Natural science is the study of the sources and control of natural energy. And social science, theoretically expressed as economics, is the study of the sources and control of social energy. Now you see why it's important for you to know yourself?
Yes, wow.
I'm just throwing these things in there so you can put these things together if you didn't already do it. Both are bookkeeping systems, mathematics. Therefore, mathematics is the primary energy science, and the bookkeeper can be king if the public can be kept ignorant of the methodology of the bookkeeping. And that reflects right into the priesthood. You see the point? See why they won't give the people the knowledge? And they've been sucking off of you too. And they're in partners with Rome. So you must be willing to reject them. And don't take it personal, because they're taking it personal while they're sucking your blood. Because they are vampires at the pulpit. All science is merely a means to an end. The means is knowledge. The end is control. Beyond this remains only one issue. Who will be the beneficiary? See why we tell you put all your stuff in trust? You're throwing a rock in the gear of their operations. And so when you look at House Joint Resolution 192, 73rd Congress in session, you understand? Even if you don't have all the knowledge, what you do is you put a wrench in the gears. You don't need to know it all. You need to understand the mechanics of things.
Period.
And if you can get people to do it in a wave, the system collapses, so there's no need for him to keep on creating straw instruments that nobody wants anymore. You don't have to beat Goliath, stomp on his feet.
Is that still Rex 84? Is that still King Alfred that you're reading? Because they're in.
City?
Is that still King Alfred that you're reading?
Yes. Now, and so when you look at that, consider the book of Daniel, legs of iron, feet of clay. The feet of clay, which means the foundation is a fraud, so therefore the foundation is weak. Don't get impressed with the big chest, with the iron and the brass and the armor. Look at the mathematics of it, the logistics of it, the thesis of it, the antithesis, and the balance. Stomp on his toes. His own weight will bring him down. It's called judo, jiu-jitsu, and stuff like that. It's called circular movements. Mathematics. Do you understand? The point that I'm saying to you, you have weapons that you don't know you have. Just don't use them for meanness.
Right.
But you do have a defense. You just didn't know you have a defense because the priesthood won't teach you. They teach you to be victims and beggars. Go ahead, son.
Islam, I like to say that we have weapons at our disposal, weapons of mass construction.
Yes.
You know, they have mass destruction,
Yes.
but we also have mass
It's
construction.
called the balance. Thesis, antithesis.
Putting our minds together for the same thing, we can construct anything.
Unity. And in the
Islam.
political realm, it's called nationalization.
See, that's
It still has a metaphysical construct. And a lot of people don't know that. Now, and this is why it is said in what you would call the philosophical realm, honor your mothers and your fathers, that your days may be longer upon the earth land that the Lord thy God has given thee. It has a political aspect. And people keep looking at it, they repeat it and really don't understand the metaphysical activity on a sincere wavelength that it can be used in order to save people. And so this is why, like in the political realm, the high priests who really know the science, they always did. When a nation stays going down the tubes, the ultimate political power just below the level of realm of the etheric plane in the physical realm is called sovereignty. It is the God power exercised on earth, the power of life and death. And so what is the power of the sovereign assigned by the mother if the mother doesn't do it? Because the nation comes from nativity. Natio means to be born. Nasi means to be born, to be brought into existence. Therefore, with the honor of your mothers and fathers, you have the divine energy from your mother's womb if you would use it. And so what do as a son of God? You nationalize. What do you think Hitler did with Germany when Germany was going down the tubes? What do you think Castro did with Cuba when Cuba was going down the tubes? What do you think that Vicente Fox threatened when they called Clinton the American president? He says a lot of American presidents don't insult us.
That's lying.
He wasn't buying it. What do you think Chavez did with Venezuela? When the European dark priests with their hedge funds was raping Venezuela, he nationalized. They attacked him later, but he nationalized. That's a rule all over the planet, a rule that we have failed to address. Therefore, we suffer. But the prophet told us that, 1913. But since we didn't believe him, so we've been sacrificing generation after generation after generation. Now we're getting ready to have no more blood in the turnip type thing. And so that's just giving you something to look at. Giving you something to look at and giving you some tools. You do with it what you will, but you can't say that you weren't told. Because Rome's going to have trolls up there anyway. It doesn't matter. Because the deal of this, you ain't getting past this generation without this manifesting anyway. So we ain't going to prove nothing to you. Rome's going to prove it to you. You think Jenny Craig made you lose weight? Keep messing with this European, then look in the mirror every 2 days and see how much cheek you got left. Because he's doing karate kicks left and right. Big boots too. And they're going to stop talking about human beings with crayons. And like other civilized beings, they're going to start honoring their mothers and fathers one way or another, or they ain't going to be here. Now, that's fact. In 1954, this was the issue of primary concern, although the so-called moral issues, quote unquote, were raised in view of the law of natural selection. So we still talk about nature's God, nature's law, aren't we?
Yes.
They're looking at natural cause and effect.
Yes.
Yet this is a political doctrine, which means they are aware and cognizant of the maxims of laws, the maxims of ethics. And having the knowledge, they're skirting the edge of the plate all the time. And then deceiving us into emotional arguments that cause failure. Then they feed on us. That's the danger of belief systems. Controlled by others. That's why they say you control the narrative, you control the people.
Indeed.
Right.
And that's why they need Negro leader guys to keep you in the black codes and marching and complaining like you're on a treadmill. If somebody pay attention to the background, look at it, somebody got this screen thing rolling it. Everybody else moving along, we on the treadmill, we in the struggle. We're full of doo-doo. We are. So in 1954 was the issue of primary concern. Although the so-called moral issues were raised in view of the law of natural selection, it was agreed that a nation or world of people who will not use their intelligence are no better than animals who do not have intelligence. Such people are beasts of burden and stakes on the table by choice and consent. So now you see why they don't feel sorry for mistreating people that insist on claiming to be black. Who ain't black, but they insist on being it, and now they're mad because they're in the black codes. It's called consent. There's no such nation that exists on planet Earth, never did. And they don't have no treaty with no black nation, therefore they have no obligation. And since you won't enforce the Constitution, you suffer consequences. This is why Drawley said, help me in the great missionary work, bringing our people back into the constitutional fold of government, enforcing our Constitution for the United States of America. And so Obama went to Egypt, capital dominion of the Moroccan Empire. Is that not chapter 47? Rahm Emanuel, the Jew, left his administration the year before, and he told about Noble Drawley, your estate in aggregate form, and issued it on December 22nd, the first full day of the winter solstice, off his desk from Chicago, sister city of Mecca. Look at the math, look at metrology. You think that stuff is not mathematically planned?
It is.
Then he went to the Alhambra, and she wore a red dress. Then he showed you the true American flag. Then he came back and signed the rights of indigenous people. I don't need to go any further. None of those things are coincidental, but what you do is on you. You've been told. You know, because we're not going to spend a lot of energy redundantly saying the same things, but we want some people who haven't had the opportunity to have some greater understanding of the political ramifications and understand that that is, which is in the ethereal realm, is reflected in the physical, slower wave. However, with the projection of the mind, this is what you call the astral travel, or what some people call lucid dreams, or what some people call psychic.
That's what they call it.
It's all the same.
It's all the same.
It's just simply, and this is what the really lesson is for. It's for, and this is really the lesson when you really study the works of Yahushua, who you call Jesus. He really came to demonstrate to you that you can cross the realms or you can cross the dimensions without having to lose the body.
Yep.
And can be done at will. That's the real lesson of Yahshua. And it doesn't mean forget everything else he said. That is his ultimate lesson. And for those around the world of the high priesthood and of those in secret societies that achieve certain levels of degrees of knowledge and philosophy, they're allowed to go to Srinagar, Hindustan, in Sindh, what you call India, and view the body of the Nazarene in a golden shrine. And it's in Srinagar, India. And he was a Buddhist, and he was Muslim.
That's right.
And it's no secret to the rest of the world. It's only secret to the people here in North America. That's for those who didn't know, who think they know that book. They don't know that book, and they don't know no Jesus. With all due respect. So that's a little bit more tidbit that all priests know that they ain't telling you. So now you've been told. And the body's well preserved too. After thousands of years. Old technology. So, consequently, in the interest of future world order, peace, now you see where they got the new world order from? And tranquility, it was decided to privately wage a quiet war against the American public. That's you. With the ultimate objective of permanently shifting the natural and social energy wealth of the undisciplined and irresponsible many into the hands of the self-disciplined, responsible, and worthy few. In order to implement this objective, it was necessary to create secure and apply new weapons, which, as it turns out, were a class of weapons so subtle and sophisticated in their principle of operation and public appearance as to earn for themselves the name silent weapons. So that's to remind you that you don't need to convince the Europeans and their different organizations and agencies who you are. You need to convince yourself and your families. You just put him on notice. Are we clear? And this is so that he cannot energize on your behalf under that Sister Q trust that was set up by the popes of Rome without you having what you say a say-so. Because if you don't speak, their claim stands as an affidavit. This is why they say tacit acquiescence. This is why you don't do motions, you do affidavits whenever you're corresponding. And keep in mind, in problems in the third dimensional realm, in the realms of life period, and in the wave energies, not to act and not to think does not bring effect. For consciousness comes from thought activity. And therefore, you have the aggregate philosophy where they say the squeaky wheel gets the oil. So if you don't speak up on principle, don't expect remedy. Therefore, passivity is dangerous in the third realm. Are we clear? So don't get upset, too much because we're catching hell. But understand why Drawley said to you on the metaphysical plane, he said, I want active Moors, not passive Moors. What he's telling you is the cause and effect principle of the operations maxims of nature, how she works. Because she does not recognize person or station. So people who have fallen to this idea that they fear Rome and they won't be active because Rome's going to take their sandwiches, he's going to take all your sandwiches. It's just easier. Just like when the beast comes after the cattle in the field and everything, the cow over there see everybody running, he said, I'm going to stand over here, let them run and get tired. And he run act like he's going after them, and then midterm turn around and go get the one that's lazy. Easy meal. And this is back to the conversos who thought that they was going to please Rome by converting to Constantinianism, hiding behind Christianity. That's why when you do the research, the European says 90% of conversos are not trustworthy. We're going to get rid of them. So all of these so-called Negroes who think they're Christians, and we're not talking about the principle of Christianity. Don't mistake that, because they're not really Christians, they're Constantinians. They thought that they pleased the European by claiming to be Christianity, that they're going to be safe. He's going to eat them first.
How about that?
He's going to eat them first. He's going to eat them first. Now, and the point we're giving you the military doctrine so you can see that they have a guide manual. They don't sit around and they're not thinking an attitude. They have a guide manual. It's called King Alfred. Wex 84. They're not operating on, they don't like your color. They're operating on King Alfred, which is an unum sanctum policy, including gentrifying these people's neighborhoods, since they won't honor their mothers and their fathers. Just let you know. Now the deal of it is that what we're saying to you is that start using your thought energy. That's basically what we're saying to you. Start using your thought energy. But don't be negative with it. Just be mathematical with it. Are we clear?
It's clear.
And this is again why Raleigh said, learn to love instead of hate. Because love is actually the key to break the boundary. And I know it's difficult when you're catching hell. But you need to know that you gave a little bit of hell, which is why you're catching hell now. So don't come into this knowledge feeling innocent. Are we clear? Go ahead, bro.
What's an example of being mathematical in your thinking?
Say it again.
What's an example of being mathematical in your thinking?
All right, it's called deductive reasoning. That means let's keep it simple, like a child. How much is 2 and 2 in this room? 4. But if y'all was trying to get in the movies to see Black Panthers, they wouldn't let you in. Now listen, look at it this way. We have children that we're trying to encourage to do better. Right? How much is 2 and 2?
4.
Well, you guys, either somebody can't count, or I don't know, maybe we need to get some espresso coffee. How much is 2 and 2?
4.
It's more like it. I had to add to it for the effect. Now, let's leave here and go down the street around the corner in the yard where not many people are looking. How much is 2 and 2?
4.
Well, let's go to the top of the mountain. How much is 2 and 2?
4.
Let's go to the bottom of the ocean. How much is 2 and 2?
4.
Why is there no debate in what 2 and 2 is?
Universal.
It's based on mathematical principle.
Yes.
If you're dealing with belief systems, some of you say, according to my religious belief, 2 and 2 is technically, according to the interpretation of the Bible, it's 3.5. Because Rev says so. And then over here they tell you it's 5. Because see, if you looked at it spiritually, it's really like this. And metaphysically, it's really 8. And this is where you get all the secularism, the BS. Math don't lie. Are we clear?
Clear.
Scholars don't deal with belief systems, they deal with mathematics and a knowledge of energy. And math, or the numeral system, is just simply glyphs that represent energy forces. Not unlike eggs that represent the life that the mother gives from whatever species. Crack that egg and what's in, oh, dang, all right. Didn't know that was what it is. I thought it was a chicken dinosaur. I think I'm taking back to the woods. You know, that type of thing. But the deal of it is that this is why in proper education you learn maxims of law,
Yes.
maxims of ethics. You learn the foundation of religious philosophy, which is cosmology, astrology, and it's universal. It's universal language. You know, these are established facts. These are agreements that the cognitive thinking have come to the conclusion of in synthesis that set up principles that operate on planet Earth. From these principles, constitutions or the makeup for governing self are constructed. That's why you even see in philosophy, they say constitution of man, then you get into metaphysics. Then you deal with the constitutional order. They still deal with the 7, although there's hundreds, you still have the energy of 7. And this is why they mark the 7 chakras, main chakras, though they're hundreds in the body form. You get the point? But you're also dealing with the balance of the 7 ruling planets in this particular solar system. You see? And then we're dealing with the planet Diwati. So Diwati, what you call Mercury, is a communication center that was always used in this particular solar system between the planets. Because all of us weren't always on this planet. And all of us still aren't on this, just on this planet.
That's right.
It's just that these people here don't know how things work here. And so from the true name of Mercury, Jyoti, that's DJ. Jyoti is where you get the phrase deity.
Yes.
And because of the communication practices over millennia, loosely they refer to the ruling planets as deities, but there's really only one deity. This is what they call monotheism. But it's really actually in the aggregate plane of the planets, not a belief system.
Islam. Islam.
Are we clear?
Clear.
And the rays that you see in ancient Hikupta are also plate lines where we pass from dimensions. It's not just the sun in the sky. Therefore, Jesus is the Savior of the world because Jesus is the sun. His comes from Ios, which is the sun, physical, in this particular solar system. And we pass through all the planets. Now, the deal is for space and time, we fold. So I'll tell you that much. That's how time is cut, because time is only a construct of the mind. Once you understand those, once you started thinking outside of that box, this is where you get the 9 points. This is your lesson matrix.
Yes.
This is a simple lesson, but yet it is fundamental. It'll take you a long way. Apply this to everything that you do. Apply it to everything that you do. And you'll be surprised how much it'll kill your naivety.
Right.
All right? And that's basically what needs to be done on the planet. We need to slay naivety. Now, in the science of physical mathematics, mathematics,
Bicycle.
the phenomena of potential energy is associated with the physical property called elasticity or stiffness and can be represented by a stretched string. Seems like a simple line, doesn't it? You'd be surprised how much science is in that.
Yes, it is. A lot.
In electronic science, potential energy is stored in a capacitor instead of a spring.
Yes.
The property is called capacitance instead of elasticity or stiffness. Also
Yes.
think retrograde.
Yes. Man,
Go ahead.
You know you did it, right?
I got you started. Huh?
Okay, so
Got your skates on?
yes.
All right.
All right. So in HVAC, a capacitor is what is used to store a charge to help the startup of either your heating or ventilation, heating or air conditioning system. So a capacitor is like a bow and arrow storing a charge, and when you go to hit start, it gives it a 75% boost added to that. So that's a capacitor, or capacitance in action.
So don't we see, even in that astrology,
Yes.
so we're talking about workings of nature, aren't we?
Yes.
That don't have a daggone thing to do with beliefs, does it?
No.
The people need to be taught that again, don't they?
Yes, they do.
And need to be taught, and write this down so that, because this should help you along the way. Anthropomorphic. And this is the area where they have pretty much slowed the adults down, because it's for children. And this is where they take the forces of nature and the operations of nature and give it personalities. So when you look in ancient Hikupta and you'll see, say, Ma'at with wings,
Yes.
that's anthropomorphic. When you see Santa Claus for the winter solstice, that's anthropomorphic. It's not wrong, it's anthropomorphic. Means it's for children.
Yes.
But when you become a man and a woman, they're supposed to teach you the science. Are we clear?
Clear.
Are we clear?
Clear.
So, the world is kept asleep in general by the dark priesthood keeping adults in the belief and faith degrees and never taking them to the fruition degree, which they all have. And that's what Jesus came for, to bring you to the fruition degree that the priesthood have cheated you out of. That's why he's arguing with them as money changers. This is also why the priesthood, delivered him to Rome, because they are in partnership with Rome, then and now. I mean, their mission didn't change. They still been doing the same thing. All right? So anthropomorphic is the methodology, just like when you have little children and, like, say, they do Sesame Street and they have that little Elmo, that little red figure, and they put big eyes on them, Elmo talks. That's called anthropomorphic. That is not a negative design by Europeans. That was done by ancient Asiatics. The European just adopted it. Are we clear?
Clear.
There's nothing wrong with it. It's only wrong when it's not explained. When you let people grow up and then don't tell them to put their childish things away. And this is what the dark priests have done, have kept the adults on the degree of the anthropomorphic child and have been raping them. And eating them too. For real, physically and otherwise.
Islam, pass the mic to the mother.
Good. Go ahead.
So his name is El Mo.
El Mo. Yeah. El Mo. Right there. Sure. El Mo. That's why Superman's called.
And he's red.
He's red too.
Yeah. But they always choose names that have a relationship to the reality, if you get the point. And so anthropomorphic is giving personification to forces and powers. And so once you understand that the books in general for the masses are given in anthropomorphic form, all you need to do is learn the rules of the thesis, antithesis, synthesis, separate the wheat from the chaff, and then take the nuts and the fruit out and walk and grow up. When I was a child, I thought as a child I did things that children do. When I became a man, I put away my childish things. That's how the priesthood has been controlling the masses and thus controlling the narrative. And then saving themselves from karmic debt by knowing that it's anthropomorphic, so they're saying they told you when they know damn well they didn't. But from a karmic perspective, it's anthropomorphic, and they're telling you. This is why even the dark priesthood, when they do things to people, they'll tell you they're going to do to you. We're going to punch you in your nose next week. They may put it in the code system. And then, or even might even put it in pictures and stuff, in comic books and movies, and they punch you in the nose next week. And if you're surprised, it means you didn't pay attention to the details. You know what I mean? And so what we want to do, and again, why we're encouraging you, is to use your thinking power. Thinking is life. And so a code, one of the philosophical maxims that Nodrali presented to the Moors, he says, man is mind. So he gave you those keys, so I'm just look back at the lesson, the earlier lesson, and you can see it. Then go to, say, chapter 1 of the Circle 7 Quran, and why it's not enumerated, distinguished from the others.
Right. Because
it talks about the creation and fall of man, but it actually gives you keys to the rise of man.
Islam.
It's all in there if you're not closed-minded. So I just want to remind you of that. So, in the science of physical mechanics, the phenomenon of kinetic energy is associated with a physical property called inertia or mass, and can be represented by a mass or a flywheel in motion. And those you know anything about engineering now, you understand why they have flywheels in car engines, at the back of car engines. They're dealing with forces of nature putting it into a mechanical form. And then they must seek, even when they use certain metals, certain properties, they always seek balance. You see? So think of this all the time. So when you're seeking balance in mechanics, you're still dealing with what? Synthesis. Mm-hmm. So therefore you need mathematical engineering application to recognize it when you get to the balance point.
Yes.
You see? So in electronic science, kinetic energy is stored in an inductor, in a magnetic field. Mm-hmm. And so when you really study magnetism, magnetism and electricity are almost the same thing.
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead. Yes.
Go
ahead.
Yes. In electromagnetism, you would need, let's say, for example, you could take like a battery from a drill, have wires alligator clipped out of that to, let's say, paper clips, put magnets under that, and then create a coil out of wire, and have the wire coil sit in the paper clips, and when you apply the voltage, which is the pressure, from the battery through the alligator clips to the paper clips, what will happen is you'll create an electromagnetic field which will cause that coil to turn because you have the basics there. You have voltage, which is pressure, okay? And then you have a path for the current to flow, which is the copper, and it has to be a certain level of resistance, which means that it won't burn up, you know what I mean, if the amperage is too high, you know what I mean? And also with that, and lastly, that's what you have when you're dealing with magnetism. You're dealing with the current, you're dealing with voltage, and you're also dealing with resistance. I yield the floor, Islam.
I'm going to read this part, and then let's feel open to talk a little bit.
I have a question.
All right?
Thank you.
Go ahead, sis.
Islam.
Islam.
Okay, with all that you just spoke of, with the magnetism, what are some of the things that we can utilize or should be utilizing in order to increase our energies within us?
Okay, that's a perfect question. One thing that's really good and simple that I have practiced, I got it from the microprocipus video. Brother Taj goes over a breathing exercise. That breathing exercise, I practice it, but I took it as a reference point and I practice it. But in that video, he says you can really, change your energy and get correct by grounding when you do that breathing exercise, and sometimes sun gazing as well in combination. So I will say that one of my daily practices, and some here have actually witnessed me do it, early in the mornings I'll go out there in the grass and sun gaze and do the breathing exercise that if you go on YouTube, it's called microprocipus. All right, part 1 and part 2, and Brother Taj goes over at about the 37-minute mark. He actually goes over a breathing exercise that if you actually do it before you study and before you go to bed and when you wake up, that's something that will actually clear you mentally. And what's actually happening is you're ridding yourself of negative energies. So that's one way of doing it. And like when Brother Hannibal brought up last week about the Om Mani Padme Om, and you hold in, your hands in a downward on the left and the upward in the right. That's another way of grounding negative energies. So when they're giving these reference points, try them, because I did, and the only thing I can see is a positive result. So I yield the floor.
And then one thing that Noble Drawley said is every once in a while, take your shoes off, go out and place your feet on the earth.
Yes.
That's what ground you out. So, if people would really study Noble Drawley, he's a metaphysician. And he gives us a lot of keys, but I think a lot of people miscalculate or misunderstand him because they're looking at him from what they think is a religious perspective based on the dogmatic systems they've been trained in. Therefore, they don't take a lot of his instructions seriously. But that's a reminder. He's actually a doctor.
Yes, he is.
Now, back to King Alfred. Descriptive introduction of the silent weapon. Now, pay attention to this, you all. And remember, the appeal to you is to start thinking, but don't do the negative. Start thinking. Look for balance. Are we clear?
Clear.
Everything that is expected from an ordinary weapon is expected from a silent weapon by its creators. And remember, you're co-creators. So the European is using this science against you. But only in its own manner of functioning. It shoots situations instead of bullets. Propelled by data processing instead of chemical reaction, which is explosion. Originating from bits of data instead of grains of gunpowder. From a computer instead of a gun. Operated by a computer programmer instead of a marksman. Under the orders of a banking magnate instead of a military general. Pay attention to this, you all. It makes no obvious explosive noises, causes no obvious physical or mental injuries, and does not obviously interfere with anyone's daily social life. Yet it makes an unmistakable noise, causes unmistakable physical and mental damage, and unmistakably interferes with daily social life, i.e. unmistakable to a trained observer, one who knows what to look for. The public cannot comprehend this weapon and therefore cannot believe that they are being attacked by a subdued by a weapon. The public might instinctively feel that something is wrong, but because of the technical nature of the silent weapon, they cannot express their feelings in a rational way or handle the problem with intelligence. Therefore, they do not know how to cry for help and do not know how to associate with others to defend themselves against it. When a silent weapon is applied gradually to the public adopts to its presence, and learns to tolerate its encroachment on their lives until the pressure, psychological via economic, becomes too great and they crack up. Therefore, the silent weapon is a type of biological warfare. It attacks the vitality, options, and mobility of the individuals of the society by knowing, understanding, manipulating, and attacking their sources of natural and social energy and their physical, mental, and emotional strengths and weaknesses. So while we're sitting around talking about colors, they're looking at you as a machine. And they're attacking you based on the forces of nature by understanding the body. That's again why I shared that first lesson with you, because you do have a counter, but you cannot do it with belief systems. You're going to do it with knowledge. Are we clear?
Clear.
And then it also puts you in as to why the priesthood, who are compromised, won't teach you those lessons even though they get them, because it would free you not only from Rome but also from them who work for Rome. This is why they get upset when you start talking Moorish science, because they know what's behind it, because that's what they've been ruling the world with, only to the negative. See, because powers, the energies are neutral.
Yes.
How you use them is the issue. Are we clear?
Yes.
So I just wanted to drop that at you to show you in the politics of it all. In the social engineering, how the metaphysical, spiritual lesson, as you would call it, actually gives you fundamental tools. So if you know those rules, now you understand why I said at the end, if you know this, you know all. Which means now you can navigate. You see? All you have to do is what? Maintain the integrity of the rules. And therefore, one who really knows religious rules is self-disciplined, isn't he or she? Because it doesn't recognize personal station. It ain't personal.
Indeed.
Therefore, you must take responsibility. And if you're dealing with people and you're talking about liberating them or helping them, don't feed them no BS.
Give them keys.
Tell them the truth. Or leave them alone. And this is where the charge that Romans have with the so-called black leaders, most who are agents for central and federal, which you see right in the document.
Yes.
And they get tired of them marching all over the place, taking no space to disturb the peace, and they'll say, why don't y'all leave us the hell alone, go back to your nigger leaders that keep selling y'all back into slavery. Because they're saying it because most of them are 32, 33-degree Mason, got a Moorish fez dressed in jewels, and all of their lodges have Muslim names. Yes, they do. And people from all around the world come right there at Washington, D.C., the George Washington Masonic Lodge, and see all the presidents with their fezes on, including the president of Mexico, 1857, with his fez on with Allah on it. And they had to fight at the Alamo, Allah's Moors, Lone Star State. These people still don't get it, but they know gods and devils, and they full of doo-doo and keep sacrificing their babies. So the world don't feel sorry for them, because they're arrogant. And their nigger leader guys keep on telling them that human beings are crayons, and they keep rationalizing it. And it takes them into the black codes. Then they want to march all around the place and complain because they were too lazy to read. And they think they got to convince the European, we got to tell them that we're somebody. Well, I guess he already knows that. He knows about the Renaissance, 13th century, 16th century, when the Moors went into Europe, brought them out of darkness into the marvelous light. And they're ruling the world with that knowledge. But we gave it up, adopting idol god worship systems, and fell and keep looking for Jesus to save us. You will save your daggone self. Grow up, render unto Caesar what is Caesar's, honor your mothers and fathers like other civilized beings, and let's start fixing this thing. Therefore, like the prophet said, if I could get you all thinking again, you save yourselves. Any questions, y'all?
Mother Delilah.
Good.
I thought that was me. I'm sorry.
That was a spaceship.
That was after.
Good.
Just a camel walk and sort of an update. Here's this European, his name is John Perkins. He has written a book called Confessions of an Economic Hitman. And so an update in terms of how they do the King Alfred plan is that by way of, say, the Clinton Foundation.
You can see the pattern doesn't, they don't even change the pattern.
Right, the Clinton Foundation, they'll go into a country and destabilize it by saying, you know, we'll give you $30 million and we'll help you build your infrastructure, and you can pay us back. How they do it is they go in there and they say you can only use the U.S. corporations to do the building. You can't have anybody else come in there and do it. You got to let us do this. And then they determine how they're going to pay it back. Plus they look at their GDP and add another 20% on that to that, and they ask them to pay back the loan, all right? And they are never able to pay back the loan because it's way
beyond. And they claim the resources.
Yes, and then they go in there and say, well, you either got to pay us back or we'll take your resources. And if they refuse, then they send in this thing called the jackal, which is what happened to Mossadegh in Iran, Lumumba, and Allende, and I think, what's his name in Panama? And Allende in South America, they went in there, the jackal went in there. When they refused to pay the debt back, then they send in the jackal and they just killed them at that point. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, you comply and you give them your resources, they take over your resources for the country. And that's how they destabilize all these countries. And I was always wondering how the Mexican police or policy enforcers, always seem to be corrupt. But, it's to the highest bidder. They keep them coming that way and say, well, if the president won't agree with it, then we can see that how you can do it. But it's called Confessions of an Economic Hitman. Islam, are you the
Islam. Now, what do you understand about Executive Order 11490 and also what? House Joint Resolution 192. Now, what did they do? And this is also back to a counter move to Noble Ali telling them to honor the treaties, right? So let's look at this. Let's look at correlations and look at what you call the thesis, antithesis, right? So we're dealing with Travicon's speech on the floor of Congress, right?
Okay.
There's your reference, right? Now which we all know and all scholars know, the United States federal government has been dissolved, which means as a political entity, it does not exist.
At all.
Everything that's being operated is a fraud. All those persons who are claiming to be government are imposters. However, they pay Negro leader guys to tell the people that America is a country and that the United States is a country, and they mix the two, right? And then they get their backdoor 501c3 kickback payment. Right. And then the corporate entities, the members of the Roman Curia put Negro funds aside to keep these guys with peanut butter sandwiches. All right, but let's look at this. Now let's look at what do we understand? This is back to economic hitman principle. So we look at all of their operations of politics The pattern doesn't change. They may change names, etc. The pattern doesn't change. Federal Reserve notes are unsigned checks. Now, how many people have been trained that they have money? Federal Reserve notes are unsigned checks written on a closed account. Federal Reserve notes are an inflatable paper system designed to create debt through inflation, which is devaluation of currency. Now, keep in mind when they set up the double stock trust. And as you can see, even right there, no contract in common law, but look at the common law. Keep in mind that they set up the double stock trust under canon law. And of course, that's the straw man that everybody keeps trying to capture, that they're not going to capture. And so you can see that they do not change the pattern. Our problem is we keep following behind Negro leader guys who we think love our people because they keep saying African American, two pyramids, and Kemet, and we get impressed. While they can't fix a daggone door.
That's submission to our lower self, you know.
Of course it is. It's called sellout. It's called, what is sellout?
Prostitution.
You know, it's what it is. But the corporate entity operators pay them and keep them with, nice cars and institutions, and people think that that means progress. And so they follow them, not knowing that they intend to take everything they got, hypothecate. It's already hypothecated, right?
Yes.
So let's look at this. And keep this in mind. And this is redundant. But keep in mind, 1913, Raleigh set up the Canaanite temple for the restoration of the state, correct?
Yes.
So look at this. Prior to 1913, most Americans owned clear allodial title to property, free and clear of any liens or mortgages until the Federal Reserve Act of 1913 hypothecated all property within the federal United States to the Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve, in which the trustees, stockholders held legal title. U.S. citizen, tenant, franchisee was registered as a beneficiary via her birth certificate. In 1933, the United States hypothecated all of the present and future properties, assets, and labor of their subjects, quote unquote, the 14th Amendment U.S. citizen to the Federal Reserve System. When you understand this, you understand why you nationalize. Because they think that U.S. citizen is a citizenship for benefit, and they're actually stock. And all of their property, their labor, including their labor, is hypothecated. So if they keep people sitting around arguing racism, they ain't dealing with what the real problem are they? Now, as you know, they set up the double stock trust. Let me see if we can find that in the document. So, the Federal Reserve System is based on the canon law and the principles of sovereignty protected in the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. In fact, the international bankers use the canon law trust as their model, adding stock and naming it a joint stock trust. The U.S. Congress had passed a law making it illegal for any legal person to duplicate a joint stock trust in 1873. And now you see this is 2 years after 1871 when they set the Act of Congress February the 2nd, and of course they did the bond system since 61 on us. And of course if they can get the so-called black leaders talking about two pyramids and making people think that they've achieved something, they're not addressing what's really happening to our people. You see, when all they need to do is simply nationalize, put their stuff in trust, and what it does, it kills the corruption of the system, because the corruption of the system exists because these people won't claim their estate. And then they can't claim their estate because they're not their proper person, because they keep saying they're Negro, black, and colored, Smith, Jones, and Johnson. So when you do an analysis of the what do we begin with? We'll begin the lesson with, y'all. What was the beginning of the lesson? Thesis, antithesis.
Equals synthesis.
Right. Synthesis. So you don't seek the balance, therefore you don't do an action to counter them. And therefore their claim stands. And it's back to the art of war. He who leaves the battlefield first loses the war. It ain't a matter of morals. It's a matter of persistence. You must want your birthright back as much as he wants to take it.
That's one of the 10 Commerce maxims, too.
It's maxims.
Mother Nailah is trying to get your attention.
Oh, excuse me.
First,
Yeah.
and then brother,
Yeah, this question came up a little bit a while ago online from Fox Black, where it said, would it be wise to get righteous Moors to claim the seats of government to restore the republic, or should we rebuild anew?
Now, this is the deal. When Joel said I want active Moors, not passive Moors. In answering to that question, that's one of the reasons why we put out the restoration of consular court. That's just so that people would study and get the concept, and the question would be answered yourself. Because your activity constitutes government. You don't need to be in those seats.
Yes. Thank you.
You see, because it actually, in the future realm, governments as you know them will be dissolved any daggone way. It's just that we're trying to encourage people to fix the now because they're responsible to that in divine law. Because by our inactivity, we're not in the frame of mind to act properly. Therefore, it's sort of like we're promoting certain activities for exercises, knowing that they will be dispensed soon. But they are necessary training wheels.
Right.
But it is actually the governing of the self, which is again why we gave the first part of the lesson. So that people can recognize what they call the ethereal in its relationship to the physical. Because their mind is that they're separate. Because they've never been taught in general to the masses as connected. I mean, we're talking about in a functional manner. It's not that it hasn't been mentioned, but they don't teach them any methodologies. You know, so they just deal with repeating statements from the Bible, from the Quran, from Muasli, from the Vedas, from Upanishads, you know, from the Urantia book. But functionally, they have no skills. You know, the priest got that in a nice suit and a parish and going to the Bahamas with Jesus' head with Bertha Butts and a sister.
And I just want to say that question, I believe, came from Kitsune in Japan. That came all the way from Japan, that question. I have one more question because it keeps coming up. It's kind of veering off the subject, but everybody's interested.
It's never off subject,
well,
really.
It has to do with trust.
Yes.
Get a lot of questions about trust, and somebody just said, I need to know more about trust. But one question has come up a couple times this week from people who have called me with concerning their parents' property that was never put in trust, and the parents are now deceased, have transitioned, and they want to know, can they, after the fact, put the properties in trust, even if, say, the municipality is going after them for taxes?
All right. Now let's go back to the first lesson for a minute. Hold the thought. And this with all due respect. Now, where we at? Know thyself. Thesis plus antithesis equals synthesis. A Moorish science added lesson dealing with fundamental truths for all Moorish Americans. The unconditional heirs of the North Gate. Therefore, you need to understand that you're an heir. And you need to talk and think accordingly. Being an heir, what occurs if you don't claim your estate? It's called abandonment. Aren't all foreclosures called abandonments?
Yes.
Is that accidental?
No.
When you understand how things function, you understand why certain things are placed in county records all across the country. These things of gentrification of our communities are not knowable. They're knowable. Instead of our people dealing with the substance of the matters that affect them, they deal with belief systems that don't work and they won't let them go. Therefore, an heir in honor of their mothers and fathers in law are descendable. Is that not true?
That's true.
If such persons or person is not in the honor of their mothers and fathers, according to law, in descendancy, it can be cheated.
Yes.
Isn't that why the Europeans settled the brand systems, Negro, black, and colored, and Smith, Jones, and Johnson, and put their name on these people as a curse? I certainly know that that's in book of 64, Isaiah, in the Bible, that these people keep saying they know.
Department of Orphans.
So such non-descendable persons have no estate. Now, if you want to preserve the property from your mothers and your fathers, you better know yourself, and you better set up a trust, being an heir, because didn't we just read that all things are hypothecated? So they got a claim out there running. They have a claim running. Right, wrong, or indifferent, it's running. Now, if you don't make a claim on your estate, it's abandoned. So that's the first thing. Now, when you look at Article 6 of the Constitution for the United States, even though you know these people are de facto, they're still acting as trustees. They're just dealing with double stock trust. They're pretending to be government, and they're managing people's estates under the 62V Act of 1666. They got the nigger leaders sitting around talking about colors and racism, and they're running these people's birth certificates, marriage certificates, and all these instruments on the stock market as we speak. For some reason, the people try to act like this is so difficult that they don't understand to claim their stuff. But you can't claim your stuff if you're not your proper person. I think in elementary school they teach the people that the Dred Scott is the most important slave case ever to come before the Supreme Court of the United States. Is that not true?
Yeah.
True.
1857?
Yes.
So since that's the most important slave case, and then you look at the cover sheet, it says plaintiff in error, doesn't it?
Yes.
So this stuff is not secret, is it? So it appears that people of Asiatic African sent under European colonial operations in North America don't seem to take those issues seriously. And so they don't address things like that because they're not into that, because that's that Moorish stuff. And then they keep losing everything, and they want to pray and lay his hands on things, and they ain't getting nothing. And they ain't figured it out yet. Now, everything that operates under occupational law is movements within trusts. They're called Thesis trusts. Now, this is the deal. This is why we tell people, study basic trust law. You can get PDFs, Weiss's Handbook on Trust Law.
I mean, it's on the drive.
It's on the drive. From the house of reawakening minds and sandwiches and stuff.
I mean,
Anyway, these are fundamentals. The deal of it is, and this is why we did before, remember we were in the living room, we did we're just talking casually.
Adverse claims.
Adverse claim.
Right.
Ongoing is what interrupts their claim. Meaning, look at this. Look how much energy that our people over the years have put in mosque, church, synagogue, all these institutions that have drained their economy and produced nothing for them but hopes in one of these days. Meanwhile, grandmom's house that you should have been in is gone. The 80 acres that you had in North Carolina, gone. Uncle Rube's farm in Pennsauken, gone. And you got a job and got a debt with an education that you can't use, that you can't pay. When it's all about trust. Always has been. The Federal Reserve notes are unsigned checks written on a closed account, so you don't have any money. So let's get over that. They use it for bookkeeping purposes. You're under occupation. You start setting trust and making claims on your estate, putting in trust, and puts a bridge between you and the corporate European colonial operators who are here under the doctrine of discovery, stealing your property. Now they can't do what is called ex parte actions. Write that down, ex parte. So they do ex parte actions, and they've been stealing these people's houses. But when you have your stuff in trust, they have to come to the administrator and the executor. And so it blocks their action, and they can't do ex parte actions. So now they have to present it in court and have to prove that they're holders in due course. And so they must have the original mortgage signed by you with the promissory note upon which the whole transaction was built. Failure to do so kills their argument. At that point, you just claim your estate. That's how it works. It's that simple.
Islam.
However, we know that you need to study, and we all need to study. So we need to put our energy in reality and stop the BS of belief systems that don't work. Render unto Caesar what is Caesar's, because he took all your other sandwiches.
Can I? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, yes you can.
Because you had said an ex parte action, but I didn't want to interrupt the brother there because he did want to go first.
Yeah, go ahead.
So,
Go ahead, good brother.
So if I'm following you correctly,
Make sure that's on. Put it on.
yeah, press it up.
I'm following you correctly. You basically stated there's no jurisdiction of fraud and no liberation without nationalizing.
In other words, in law, any being on Earth planet that are not in propria persona. In propria persona means being yourself. It means being in your own proper person.
Yes.
Any being that's not in their proper person, the corporate state can claim your body, your labor, everything. You have no standing in law. This is why they did, this is one of the things that people need to understand. When the Europeans branded the Moors, Negro, black, colored, West Indians, Latinos, etc., they did it for the purpose to make them not descendable. It's not a racist issue, it's an estate issue. These things are known, they're not taught. Which is why you're here at the House of Reawakening Minds. Are we clear?
Clear.
Now, the deal is we give you cross-reference so that you can challenge what we tell you. So it becomes your own. Are we clear?
Clear.
At that point, you can use your own deductive reasoning and analyze protocol. Which means once you can count, once we all agree, projective agreed to the illusion of creating reality, 2 and 2 is 4, is it consensus?
Yes.
In general?
Yes.
So now you can step with no debate. Is that correct?
Correct. True.
Once you understand that the United States is not a country, it's a private corporation registered in France that Lincoln bankrupted in 1860, and they set up a couple more shells that also been bankrupt. Now you don't know that they're not government? Doesn't protocol of recognizing that become an automatic?
Yes.
Is it not hard for you or me or anyone, therefore, to understand the Clearfield doctrine that took place in Clearfield, Pennsylvania, and why the Clearfield representative won that case? Because these people ain't governing no different than Sears and Roebuck's coming from behind the counter with Ronald McDonald's shoes talking about you can't buy Wendy's. Or you won't get fined. And you say, well, I was looking for another job and stuff. And yeah, they're not government. This is why we did the reversion article. To reinforce these concepts so that you can, but you got to think it for yourself. Then they call him white man for a minute, which is sovereign. Then he exercises the sovereign power, then they want to get mad. He's European. Why do they keep lying? Well, we're used to it. Well, fine. So now you're subject. Now you don't want to use language? Well, see, ironically, then they start that silly stuff. Well, and we've got to, we've just got to do the best we can for those who listen to teach them the truth of law and history. And they go together. Respect yourself and respect them.
That's wow.
Failure to do so is dangerous because you're under occupation. Get over yourself. You lost the war.
That brother and the brother.
They got your sandwiches.
You had a question.
Good brother.
Hey, how you doing, Billy?
Yeah.
Turn it up.
Islam.
Click it on.
Islam.
You hit the button up.
Yeah, go ahead.
Islam. I got to. I just wanted to say I got to Philadelphia. I'm originally from Philadelphia. Back in '92, and I've been noticing a lot of changes.
A lot. Radical.
I mean, very radical.
Every hole they find, they're putting something there.
Yeah. I'm from the university area, and I noticed that a lot of us are getting pushed out of our homes. Taxes are pushing us up.
Of course.
And like I said, we don't own any banks. We don't have any supermarkets. We don't have any neighborhoods like, when I first got there, Blackwell was doing his thing by buying up neighborhoods and having a lot of neighborhoods, a lot of ethnicity, people of ethnicity
All right.
filling the places. And what I'm trying to say is, we don't own any banks, we don't own any supermarkets, we don't own any mass real estate. And
Now,
I see the gentrification problem, and that's what I want you to touch on.
Now let's back up. Hypothecation. You write that down. You know what it is?
Yes.
All right. Now, are these organizations addressing that? No. So if they're not addressing the root of the problem, they're not trying to fix the problem. They're talking symptom. We're talking cause or root, so that you can recognize, act, or react, or affect. But what we're presenting is thought process, the responsibility of thinking, and projecting active instead of passive, so that you're not reactive. If you're reactive, you're always on the defensive. If you understand how things operate, we've given you tools to become not necessarily offensive, but prepared offensive. And so the offense in estate law is to set up a trust, because it is now known that they have set up a Sister Q trust after the fall of the Red House. That's how the world is run. And so if the heirs of the Moors keep on trying to be black instead of trying to counter what Rome has done, they've abandoned their estate. Meanwhile, they're talking about gods and devils, and they know the God over here on the left-hand side, they found him yesterday, gave up the other God they used to believe in yesterday, and all this stuff. They're raising all these funds. They know all this stuff. The world's saying, y'all know all this God stuff. Y'all, why you got these 59,000 acronym rights organizations? You ain't achieved nothing yet. Billions of notes are put out. Stop playing victim, take responsibility. Why do they not have it? Is it not in the congressional record that has been hypothecated? Well, why are they not addressing that? Is that an opinion or is it documented?
Documented.
So we show them the documents. Durali told from 1913, the Europeans living off your virtues. If you don't do anything else, declare your nationality. Oh, we ain't into that Moorish stuff. Now they ain't got nothing. You know, it's like this. It's not remedy hasn't been given to us. We haven't listened. That's the truth. So the world don't feel sorry for us because we arrogant. See, we don't need all that because I got a Jesus sandwich.
Yo.
I don't know about you. I got Jesus sandwich. Y'all got all that going on. Y'all don't need nothing. That's how the world looks. Then next week we marching and begging. At what point we don't get it? That is contradictory. And we're too arrogant to look at ourselves. So let's look at this. United States Service Corporation operators are continuing the unum sanctum policy of the popes of Rome, of which they are courier members. Fact. The bonds that run the United States Service Corporation were set up after the commercial mercenary war that they falsely called the Civil War, which the Pope even told the people, since their Negro leaders won't tell them the truth. The Pope himself, who owns the United States, told you, with a letter to Barack H. Obama. It's public. You can pull up on the internet.
And it's on the drive.
Upside down, sideways, and all kinds. Oh, they ain't into that stuff. That's that Moorish stuff. Well, and so all that stuff is going. And they get ready to lose their asses. And it ain't Jenny Craig. That's reality. We're doing the best that we can here at the House of Reawakening Minds, dealing with controversial issues that a lot of people duck because they don't have the courage to deal with reality.
True.
Cure. If you can't box, at least guard your face so we can take some pictures later. You know what I mean? And really, see, so now in trust law, the reason why things cannot be sold because they can't own the land because the land cannot be sold. So this is why we saw earlier, they converted allodial titles to mortgages and deeds. That's not an opinion. We're showing you documents. How come in our communities where they're doing all this stuff, they have all these meetings and they have all these guys and women up there with all these images and positions, and they're talking about they having these rally speeches and ain't nobody said anything about allodial titles? Because that's where the problem is. Because that's that Moorish thing. You see what the problem is? They're collecting or protecting the images of their belief clubs instead of dealing with the real issues and pretending that they're addressing the issue, arguing, artfully describing the symptoms. We don't have no sandwiches. Everybody got sandwiches, but we got the Lord. Well, then you're cool. We don't get it yet. This is what the world is saying to us. We need to render unto Caesar what is Caesar's for real. Even though a lot of study needs to take place. If we set up trust, and it's evident, whenever they come at you, the trust puts a bridge between you and them. They can't gentrify. What they've done with the private properties, particularly since Franklin Delano Roosevelt administration, is that they have misclassified all of the private property that they have hypothecated, usually in agriculture and stuff like that. They have about 3 different categories.
In commerce, too.
In commerce. And that's where the tax base comes from. Private property is not to be taxed. Plus the tax, because it's hypothecated and our people don't put them back into allodial titles, which they were in before 1913, and in particular, us being the people of the land, we have right to aboriginal and allodial title. The Europeans don't under the U.S. Corporation and Company. This is why they march Negro leaders around to get us to agree to be Negro members of their order, which is stock, under the guise of citizens. That's the 14th Amendment, which makes us dead corpses. Then with the Smith, Jones, and Johnson, they can use the estate. This is how it works. That's actually how it works. Point. If you do a trust, what happens is it puts a bridge between you and the corporate operatives. Because they do constant entries and exits into the Sister QV trust and Cetus trust, which actually function. All right? So, and an ex parte action is where, like you see, they'll come in certain neighborhoods, right? What they call targeted neighborhoods, where the property's already hypothecated. These people, because they don't read, yeah, this is my grandmom's house, and I inherited this house and stuff. What's your name? Joe Smith. They already know it ain't yours. You know, but they let you feel good because you're sharecropping and you're a tenant. And if they read the papers, they see it right there. It's in the documents. Tenant. I own this house and stuff. See, I cut the grass and I got all this lot over here and all the way over here up to that house and stuff. I raked it yesterday. That's how they keep you raking it, because you're sharecropping. Now, when they want it, they just simply use eminent domain under sovereign power, since these people call them white people, which means sovereign. They call them that. And just because they can't read, that's on them. Which they took on in 1854, the Knights of Columbus Ku Klux Klan oath. It's a legal title. Has nothing to do with complexion. But they're going to tell you about 2 pyramids in Egypt. You get the point, good brother? Now, ex parte action is whereas the barristers create what is called a barratry argument. Write that down. Barratry. That's 2 R's. Barratry argument. In the private commercial venues that aren't courts, but are called courts, which are actually commercial venues for human trafficking. Ex parte actions are necessary because in ex parte action, they don't need judges and juries of your own peers. They just do something from a law firm, being that they're members of the Roman Curia, and call themselves judges and send it to you in the mail with a red stamp on it, not an attached stamp from the post office, which of course is mail fraud.
Yes, it is.
And give you what they usually call them, I think they call them 192s, and say,
I think you better leave the house because it's been sold at the sheriff's sale and stuff. Right? Ain't no seal on it or nothing like that.
Nope.
And no judges say.
And then the people get scared and leave the house, and then they claim the house under adverse claim. They'll go and they'll send a field man out there to see if even if you're in the house, if you haven't made a claim, it's still considered abandoned. You can be walking around the kitchen and everything, looking through the window. It's empty. You don't exist if you're not a holder in due course. And if you Smith, Jones, and Johnson, and you look like this, you still don't exist. It's called dead in the view of law. Write down civil litter mortuus. Civil litter mortuus.
Question down here.
Is that, say that?
Question down here.
You got
Question
one
front.
up front in the red.
Question.
And
Oh,
you got four brothers.
All right, go
Four
ahead.
brothers.
Okay, quick question pertains to protocol.
Protocol is simply action.
Right.
Just think action. Meaning that, like, say for instance, like if we're learning to ride a bicycle, like baby girl. All right, he got baby girl. She's 1.5. She's 1.5. Now, when she gets 2 and stuff, and she starts watching the little children ride bikes and stuff like that, and she wants a bike, and then mom buys her a little bike, and she's gonna put training wheels on her bike so that she can feel comfortable. She might buy her a tricycle, but then I want a 2-wheeler, because she wants to be like the big girls, right? So she gives her training wheels, right? Then after she starts feeling at one lesson with it, the nature of things, the abstract, balance, then mom takes the training wheels off, right? And so when she's turning corners now, she doesn't bump into the step or the curb because protocols come from a consciousness of the physics that are abstracts.
For balance.
Likewise, once you learn how to count, you know the rules. Key. Once you understand constitutional principles, how things are made up, you study the makeup and respond accordingly. Thus, protocols.
So the protocols that I'm referring to pertains to putting the corporations to notice.
That's what affidavits are for. You don't do motions. If you do motions, motions means you're asking for permission. If you're in error, you don't ask them, you tell them. So then you got to know yourself so that you are competent when you talk trash, right? Well, you ain't talking trash. You're talking instructions according to rules of airship.
Correct.
So what happens if these people have been convinced by their Negro leaders that they're going back to Africa on the other side? They're mentally disconnected from the land. They've abandoned their estate. This is also why I took you to the page in the King Alfred Tour. These people are bound to the continent by heritage. Their heritage is here. Their Negro leaders tell them that their heritage is on the other side of the water. Therefore, in law, they're incompetent. Their language will deal with incompetence, and the corporate operators of the corporate state will continue to make claim and gentrify their estates. They've abandoned their estates because they don't know themselves. Man, know thyself. Go ahead.
I don't know, sure if he's talking about.
I know what he's.
Well,
from
just for a quick, no, when you get your name, judicial notice and so forth, we talk about 7 locations to serve notice.
Not necessarily.
No, well, I'm just saying that's what everyone is under the impression that they have to automatically send this stuff out. But please explain when, in what case. That's what he wants to know.
Let's back up. So we have to do some explaining.
Right.
And logically, because this thing is bigger than us, keep in mind we put the protocols and the judicial notice and the name proclamation and attribute change for the record for yourself. They're actually when there's a counter move against your estate. But it's the nation's business. And we're only a few. And there are so many people that's been taking advantage of our people that we decided to put it on site. And as a rule, understanding that the different corporate entities go in and out of the Cedars Trust on a constant basis on behalf of local corporate operations. So those are subdivisional federal agencies that these activities relative to the Social Security number, the CUSIC number, i.e. the birth certificate, etc., will route, because they're actually bank routing numbers, actually. And so the deal of it is they start having information amongst some of the major subdivisional agencies that this person is claiming their estate, and they're in their proper person. That's the only reason we did that. But it's not really necessary, in a sense, until the challenge is there. So what do? How many seats do we have here in the House of Reawakening Minds?
45.
How often is it not full?
100% of the time.
And yet we should have standing room only.
Yes.
However, we can't reach everyone, even though people from around the world know the House of Reawakening Minds.
Right.
The concept is what is necessary. You see? Because the concept gives you protocol. Are we clear?
Mm-hmm. Clear.
But the 7 places is only because of 7 energies.
Mm-hmm.
Are we clear?
Clear.
We're dealing with kind of what you say, spiritual mathematics?
Yes.
In a way?
Yes. Sacred geometry.
And then, at the same time, what occurs is when any of your local subdivisional agencies initiate an action, due to the fact that they all are members of the Roman Curia, they all are aware that they actually are private corporations operating under the shadow government of the cabal operation set up since February 2nd of 1871. Even though the people are pretty stupid. They know that they're a private corporation. So they know that their bond systems are floated via the Circle Church and the Chancel through these subdivisional agencies. So you could pretty much notify any one of them, and then it starts getting out there that this being is cognate of the estate issue. Mm-hmm. So it's easier for them to feed on the willing dummies and the willing people in dishonor than it is for someone who's willing now to say, I'm not waiting for the Lord to give me a cashmere coat. I'm not going to be the lamb standing in the corner, sheared and talking about, oh, Jesus going to give me a coat. Because they ain't going to let that shepherd take their wool. You get the point?
Islam.
Which person's called Negro, black, and colored, never have a cashmere coat. The pastor always does. And they're in the pastor. They're sheeple. And they don't get it yet. And so nature is commanding that we start using our intelligence like the European says. Any people that won't use their intelligence to solve problems is no better than animals in the field. There are stakes on the table. And so they have no cognizance, no conscience of feeding on people that don't use divine energy. Because we've all given them tools. And since they gave up their reasoning, powerful belief systems, tough cookies, and they ain't got none. Now, once you understand how things work, protocols are what? They're automatic. No one needs to tell you.
They're fundamental.
So what do we do when people get those papers? We tell you, don't do anything, study. What occurs is most people get them, and they don't get involved into doo-doo hits the fan, then they come for rescue. And they want to do a crash course, and they want to tell you, well, you know, finally you got the meal, how do you lift the fork? Look, we cook the food. We ain't got time for that. You better learn how to lift it. Yeah, but they didn't tell us how to lift the fork. They didn't tell us how to put the spoon in. So we're going to argue about what's for dessert. And this is what they do. They ain't stuck a fork in the meal and want to debate the dessert. There will be casualties in war. Now that's the real truth. Because we give more than enough information for a child to figure this stuff out. And adults should be able to, if they're willing to render unto Caesar what is Caesar's and just use their divine mind. Meaning it's called common sense applies to the common law, which trumps the Roman law and the canon law upon which the straw man was built. If you know that, you know protocol.
Yes. Yes.
In other words, if you know, see, we take walks, right? We're just jogging and stuff. And every time we go down 5th Street, they take our lunch.
You'll stop going down 5th Street, yeah, eventually.
Ain't nothing wrong with 6. You know, and we don't get it. You know what we remind us of. Now listen, and let's kind of look at how some people look at us. And you know how like some people get this attitude, this stereotype type attitude. They say black people don't want anything. You want to know why they have that stereotypical attitude? We always talk about Jesus, God, Allah, Moses, Muhammad, the Quran, the Bible. We know all of this stuff. We're so spiritual. We pray, we meditate. We got all this going on, and we always begging. All the gospel songs are begging songs. We sing good though, but they're all begging songs. Yeah, they're all begging songs. They used to be songs where we maintained the culture.
Yes.
Did code systems for escaping European colonial operations. Now they're begging songs. And then we call them spiritual. We lying. However, the world don't feel sorry for us. Because if we got all these gods and these personal relationships that nobody else got, why we always broke? At what point we don't get it? They kind of look at us like this. Notice this. Bang! That was a good one. Bang! Oh! Damn. Next thing, is he getting spiritual? No. We see what we're doing with meditating because black people need their own aspirin factory. And a child would say, well, why don't you consider stop banging your head against the wall?
Exactly.
Not only would we not need aspirin factory, you won't need an aspirin at all. Oh no, we can't do that because we're in the struggle. Bang! And so that's how the world looks at us. That's why they got the idea that we don't want anything. Because we keep doing things over and over again that prove failure and won't change our position.
Is that absolutely right?
Sign of insanity. Mm-hmm. Do you understand? You know, how do we stop having black headaches? Stop banging your damn head on the wall. Especially on the corner where it comes like this. Like a That's really painful. But we gotta believe in something. Keep it up. And this is what we keep doing. And the world doesn't have time for that. Let's look at this realistically. How many of our people in any of our communities where they're gentrifying? Now, get this.
Yes.
When you get in your next book, I want to contribute to that book because what we're going to do, we're going to take a walk in Philadelphia.
Yes.
And we're going to do a survey. We're going to see how many blocks, just pick up, we do this, you know how they, and then start walking.
Yeah.
And see if we can go 4 blocks without running to a church. Any corner. And then do some research and see how much these poor people are mortgaged to the hilt for these buildings that they're accusing of being the Lord's building. And then look at the communities with all of the blessings. The only one blessing is the guy walking down with a $3,000 suit into the Lexus with the sister from the choir trying to act like she ain't with him. And get ready to go spend Jesus' hair. And talking about, in our neighborhood, we need jobs. And one day the Lord, hold your breath. Don't hold your breath. Gonna bring us some jobs. Just put it in the Lord's hand. He's doing fine. 2 cars. But he's still the widow's pennies. Mm-hmm. Their problem is the gentrification is King Alfred. It's documented. The gentrification is unum sanctum policy. It's documented. The gentrification is the doctrine of discovery. It's documented. Mm-hmm. The gentrification is that all their property, including their labor, has been hypothecated. It's documented. But they won't go there because they ain't got nothing to do with religion. Well, that's why they don't solve no daggone problems. Since they don't want to deal with reality.
See, what it is, you don't get it. See, because we're in the sandwiches, but we're not of the sandwiches. So I ain't baloney. And they still getting eaten. We are full of it. The protocols are obvious. We need to render unto Caesar what is Caesar's, and render unto our mothers and fathers what is theirs. And that's this lost estate under European colonial occupation that's been hypothecated. Set up a trust. It doesn't even need to be serious, but what it does, it puts a bridge between you and the corporate operatives of the Roman Curia. They cannot do ex parte actions, which is one of their major keys of corrupt power. Because now they got to go to the administrator of the estate and they have to prove that they are the holder in due course, which they can never do. Why? Because the promissory note was separated from the mortgage from the beginning in violation of law in order to create the instruments that fund the whole transaction with a pooling company that they made these people a party to without their permission. And since they won't call the note that their signature is on, they've abandoned their estate. So they can gentrify these neighborhoods whenever they daggone feel like it with all of these believers. And I don't say that with humor. I say it because it's disgusting since these people don't use intelligence. Are we clear? Clear. That's why when some Europeans are losing their houses and they did adverse claims and the Supreme Court declared the MOORS foreclosures all frauds, didn't they?
Yes.
Didn't they?
Yes.
Now, what occurred with most of those Europeans? They put their stuff in trust and went and took their houses back.
Yes.
In the so-called black communities, they insisted on still being Smith, Jones, and Johnson, which means they're not the proper person. So the status is dead. And status and estate are equals. Put that down because that's important.
Yes.
Because you're talking estate law. Status and estates are equals. A Negro and black is a dead status. We're talking document. So there's no need for them to be arguing about rights and properties because they can't own them.
Nope.
Property can't own property.
Sure can't.
And we need to get over ourselves and get over our egos. So, and this is back to protocols. Once you understand the component parts of a thing, it's called logistics. In language, it's called etymology.
Islam.
In engineering, it's called logistics. Etymology and logistics are, in ways, synonymous, except that you're dealing with language, sound, transfers, etc., meanings, truth, distinguished from falsehood, denotation, distinguished from connotation. In language, you're dealing with proper engineering, distinguished from fraud engineering, wrong gear, stuff like that. Things that don't fit, round hole, square peg type thing. Once you understand them rules, once you can count, you can get on the cash register. You might be slow, but you can keep the books together. But if you don't know what's operating, that's when you have problems. And all I'm saying really is this, then this. The operators and owners of the United States Service Corporation, which is a company and not a country, operate Cetus Trust, particularly on persons of Asiatic African descent since the Civil War, which was really a commercial mercenary operation, after which there was no treaty signed, which is why this stuff is going on to this day. Right? That's what operates. So how do you stop them from running in and out of this Cetus Trust? Because they've assigned themselves as FOFA over your estate. Create a trust, and that stops it. Whether it's perfected or not is not the existence of it.
In principle.
So meanwhile, we can stop the BS, spending all our energy in these different organizations and come into venues like this and then do Saturday classes where you actually can do what you call detailed work. The same venue, or we can sit up here and say, I was walking down the street and I was hungry. And then I called on the Lord and I tripped and I almost bumped my head, but God saved me. And I saw a nickel I do not have a sandwich somewhere. That proves that God is real. And that's the kind of stuff we do. And act like we made some profound testimonial stuff. And the world keeps laughing at us all the way to the bank while we keep playing these dizzy games and calling it spirituality. And then wondering why we keep catching hell. Our people don't even know what hell. Lawbook. Give her the mic.
I got one. Unless you got yours, you want me to use my black slug?
So we don't go to hell and stuff, right?
Now here's hell. I'll show you how they don't read, right? Lawbook, go ahead.
There's the mic.
Hell.
Give her the mic. Rap first while she's looking.
Yeah, I think because the brothers had questions.
Do a little bit of freestyle.
We got them all in remembrance.
Go ahead.
You going to hell.
Now again, everyone, and this is even like when we're doing protocols, understand that all operations of the politics and economics in North America is operated by the Circle Church and the Chancellor. And they're in your face. They're the bankers and the barristers that you call lawyers and attorneys that are in your face. They are the Circle Church, open in your face. All scholars know this. All so-called Negro black leader guys, 32-degree Mason guys know this. And the politicians, all of who are Masons and Eastern Stars, got a Moorish fez, pretending they don't know what this issue is.
I got it. Ready?
Is it 857?
Are we clear? Go ahead.
All right, page 857 on 4th edition of Black's Law Dictionary.
Stay tight in the mic.
Page 857 in the 4th edition of Black's Law Dictionary. All right? Hell, the name formerly given to a place under the exchequer's chamber where the king's debtors were confined.
So hell was really in the executor's chamber under the church for people that didn't pay their tithes to Rome. And that was set up mainly by Sylvester II. And they keep telling you that it was for Jesusness and a place to go. You see the problem that we have? But they don't tell you about Jesus, God, Allah, the Bible, and the Quran. They're full of doo-doo, and we need to stop letting them get off this crap on our generation, sacrificing our babies, and then run around complaining about the symptoms.
What's the spelling for Cedar Trust?
It's Cedar's Trust. Yes.
S-I-T-U-S.
Yeah. We're talking about what's really happening to our people. The point of it is if they would start using their intelligence, we would come together and easily solve half the problems overnight. Especially when the women really figure this out and stop sacrificing their families.
Say that again.
To these priests who they keep thinking love Jesusness. That's the truth.
Islam.
They're not ignorant of what's going on in these communities. They're part of it. Are we clear?
Clear.
This is the deal. And remind you, again, ex parte actions is how they operate because they don't have to go through due process. The trust stops them from being able to do ex parte actions, so therefore they got to prove their position. And they will guarantee lose if you study the rest of the stuff that we give you. That's why they keep doing it, because our people too daggone lazy. And they keep putting their energy into institutions that do them no good. And you bring institutions to them that bring solutions, they ain't got time.
Taj, when you mean trust.
Turn the mic up.
Get in your mic.
Okay, trust. You said
You get in your mic.
Right, trust, right? Where do you go put the trust in? If you set up a trust.
See, why do you say put it anywhere?
Oh, okay. All right. Say, I'm in the process.
Why
of,
there's an assumption?
all right. Well, I'm in the process, right, of nationalization, right? In my proper person. I'm not there yet, but I'm in the process. So if I was in my proper person, right, where
First
do I
trust. First trust.
Okay, I make the trust. My body.
Now,
I
what
claim,
is now?
I claim my body.
You lose the passion. What is a trust?
Security.
No, it's not. What's a trust?
I got him.
There's nothing wrong with that.
No, I'm saying,
No.
There's nothing wrong with it.
Nothing wrong.
I don't know what it
I
is.
want good. Thank you.
That's right, thank you.
Therefore,
Yeah.
you're starting to make statements with an assumed comprehension, and you're already wrong.
But
So
I hear you
listen.
mentioning trust all the time. Set up a trust.
Alright,
Set up a trust.
alright,
What
alright.
is a trust and where
On
do
to
we go
here.
set it up?
Trust yourself.
Boom! Be clear.
Because how do I stop a foreclosure if the house is being sold or foreclosed?
All right.
How do I protect that?
That's when you introduce the trust. That's when you use your proclamation papers. Do you understand? Because this is what happens.
If I do a stopper.
That's what that it creates
Okay.
a stop.
Okay, what if I do a stopper?
All right, all right, all right.
Because I hear you mention
Now,
trust.
Now,
Stop.
look,
All right.
because you want
All right.
keep. Now he's saying a stopper. Now, what would we be thinking as a council? Are you doing it in their jurisdiction, or you're acting in diversity and presenting it from your position? Because if you're doing it in their jurisdiction, you're subject. So you need to be cognizant of that, right?
Right.
So you need to be cognizant of jurisdiction and position. Meaning that if we're playing chess, you look at the other side of the board, but you don't start reaching over there and moving things on the other side of the board you got to place. You got to understand your moves in contradistinction to those moves. Thesis, antithesis.
Mm-hmm.
Are we clear?
Clear.
So, pull out a note that you call a dollar bill. What about estoppel? Now, estoppel in their jurisdiction under a motion can be right as hell and dismissed.
Yes.
If it's an affidavit coming from your own venue, improper person, they got to answer it.
Period.
Even if my name is not on the signature, even if it was my parents' home and my name is not on the signature. I
What
can
are you
still-
saying? See, now, listen you all, because we want to study this, right?
Yes.
We want to study, because we're all family.
Break it down.
Yes.
Break it down, because I want to know.
The assumption that your parents own it in the first place is already wrong.
Yes.
Well, hold on. Let's deal with logistics. What's your parents' names?
Adil Muhammad, Abdul Muhammad.
All right, so they are national. They're implied national. All right. Now, so they're conscious that they've turned back to Islam. So they have part of it fixed. What's it say on their nationality cards?
Their nationality card. Their nationality
Yeah.
card. Adil Muhammad.
All right, good. Now, what's their nationality?
El Moroccan, more.
Is that what's on their nationality card?
I don't know.
No, you see, now, we're talking logistics. When you're talking logistics, we look at component parts and analyze them.
Yes.
We don't say, oh, this is my brother, and therefore you don't know where you come from, man, and stuff like that. And what, that's not going to work. We must identify the pieces. All right? Now, I'm going to give you a key. Number 6, actual facts. What is a Mason?
A Muslim son. Oh, sorry.
You answered it.
I didn't ask him.
My bad. I thought he was asking out. I'm sorry.
Masonry is
No,
mother and son.
No. All right. Now, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, being an adept, gave a key in actual facts. He said, what is a Mason? The answer, a Mason is a Muslim son. Now, the brothers and sisters in the masjid claim to be Muslims. Not that that's wrong. But how many people notice that and never examine it? Show you something. Swipe that. And did you also notice that he dealt with the geography of the planet? Huh? Oh, just throwing it out there. What does that mean, and what do you understand that you're looking at?
Facts. What is a Mason? A Mason is a Muslim son. Muslim son.
Now we're going to go into culture, we're going to go into nuance, and thus the protocol. Now, brothers and sisters in the Nation of Islam, explain it. We're not talking about right and wrong, we're talking about explaining it. And I'm just saying to you how things can be presented to people, and they can be dealing with things for years. And you can, if you question them, you can see that they're not being taught, and they also don't study. What did Drawley say? Go back to the state of mind of your ancient mothers and fathers. Now, nation of I, self, Lord, and master. So a Mason is a Muslim son. So the Masons are running the planet. They're Muslim son. So therefore, everyone in power all over the planet, if it was a woman, she must be an Eastern Star, or daughters of ISIS. If it was a man, he must be a Mason or a Shriner, etc. And they may have different names for the different lodges, but they're all Masons, and they got a Moorish fez. I guarantee you that. Dressed in jewels, they pin the tassel down now, because they ain't the daddy. What I'm saying is people are given things and don't know what they're given. And how far they go with it is how far they recognize what they have. Are we clear? What we're talking about is solution. What we're talking about is when you get knowledge, what do you do with it? Right? So what would you recognize with this? And you can add when, what, where. Then you go into the Renaissance, don't you? Right? Right? When's the Renaissance?
7. The Moors Renaissance?
You don't answer a question with a question. They don't make stuff up.
Renaissance.
Now, listen to this. We're family. The reason why we're asking these questions, we're generating thought. We want you to think. But we want you to recognize how the world really runs. Because when you have someone in opposition to you, they're not necessarily merciful. Here, we will give you leave and give you comfort. in the ring, they take your head off.
Well, I'm gonna get in the ring so you take my head off.
Yeah, now, so. Rome is using unum sanctum policy to steal these people's estates. Our issue is to start saving our estates, or claiming our estates, right? Right? So therefore, to do so, we must be competent. At any point that you demonstrate incompetence, they will declare you a minor under the tag minority, and you have no rights. And the state you're declared a ward of the state, and all your stuff is taken anyway. And they don't have to account for the profits. Wardship tenure, write that down. Wardship tenures. And then go to your law book. We won't even go into it right now. We're talking about cures, right? We're talking about cures. All actions that they make in North America those are the legal proceedings, not necessarily lawful, how they've been taking people's property. When you set up a trust, what it does, it corrals this. That creates an estoppel. But if you do an estoppel by normal due process that appears to be due process under the United States democracy order, which is actually a feudal law platform, the republic is not recognized, nor is a allodial title. Therefore, they just simply dismiss it and take your stuff anyway. That's called gentrification. You see? But you need to know that already. So if you have a trust in place, the derivatives that they have floating around the world and on Wall Street become dead paper. You know, like in The Wizard of Oz, when you see the Wicked Witches of the West and all that stuff? And the house falls from the ethers in my father's house. The many mansions, the ethereal world falls down on her, and her socks curl up, stockings curl up under the house. And Dorothy says, "Hey, them Gucci's is kind of nice." But I'm so scared. And the good witch said, "Oh, you like them Gucci's?" "Yeah, but I really just want to go home." And the good witch, wise woman, says, "Ching!" Dorothy, "Oh, shit." Hey. Right? And everybody told her, just follow the old road. She says, "Okay, constitution means just go back to the principles of your mothers and fathers. You didn't leave home, you just bumped your head." There's many ways they tell you over and over again what's wrong, what they're going to do to you, what your culture is. It's just that you got to be able to see it. Failure to recognize it is abandonment. As long as you abandon, long as they have mandate. Are we clear?
Clear.
I want to say something. Renaissance, look that up. Renaissance. And then you answer it. We're not going to get into that right now for time's sake. What would be a particular, let's go to a better, this is a course version, and we're going to go, say, like into, Now, in principle, if you know and you're aware of, hold on, that they have set up these Sister QB trusts, right? And Cedars Trust, and hypothecated your estate. This is a short version. And those of you who have it on flash drive, you got a longer version. So what would you do? In the name or the nom de guerre, which is a title to a trust, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Isn't it? Mm-hmm. Which is why they have it in all capital letters, and it doesn't belong to you, it belongs to them. So what happens when you try to intrude on it? They accuse you of copyright infringement. This is why UCCs, the promises don't work. Because you can't be it and not it at the same time. So you got to learn how to walk that line when you try to make a claim on that Thesis that they have operating in the derivative market, mustn't you? Mm-hmm. So this is where the what would you call it under rule of res judicata?
Ex relatione.
An ex relation.
That's right. I'm sorry, I might have said it with my mouth full, but I said ex relatione.
Tell that sandwich is good.
I'm so sorry. Yes, ex relation. My apologies. Ex relation is how you will walk that line.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but an ex relation. An ex relation. This is how you start arguing an interest in that trust without claiming it, which doesn't let them off the hook. Well, basically, in general, would you say I make no claim with respect to the title, name, nom de guerre, that's the Smith, Jones, and Johnson that they use? And I surrender and assign any and all reversionary interests to the United States and subsidiaries for full acquittance discharge settlement and closure of my reliance, Title 12 U.S.C. 95A Part 2, and I assume no liability and do not consent to stand as surety at any point, moment, or time. Now that's an adverse claim, and it's also a rebuttal. But if you know that they're operating a Cedars Trust, in its nature, that's sufficient, although you can expand on it.
Yes.
You see the point? And we have expanded on it, but that's sufficient. Because you're dealing with the issue. Meaning that you're not incompetent because you're dealing with the issue. That's actually what's happening. If you start talking about there, see, what it is, I feel as though you don't like black people and stuff. So what we're going to do, we're going to protest in front of your office and stuff. I'm getting my boys and my dog, and we marching. We're going to march hard and heavy. And I got a new pair of Thesis too. And they ain't impressed with you, and we wonder why they ain't impressed with us. And then we follow behind these people that keep putting us through this stuff instead of dealing with what's really going on. That's what's wrong with us. We're incompetent. Are we clear?
Clear.
Let's back up. Earlier we read in House Joint Resolution 192 that they hypothecated all properties, including the labor. So your labor is hypothecated. Right? No, that wasn't Wilson. Wilson, what he did, he converted all the alluvial titles into mortgages and deeds. So mortgages and deeds at North America did not exist as a political reality on real property in the state until 1913. Prior to that, you had aboriginal titles and allodial titles. So who does that apply to? They apply to the people of the land. What would you show you in King Alfred? These people are bound to the continent by heritage. Who are the people of the land? These people who think that human beings are crayons, which are incompetent positions to take. So the Europeans are hypothecating their property since they're running government. Because these people just want to deal with belief systems. They don't want to deal with facts, and so therefore they're incompetent, and therefore everybody keeps robbing them while they sit around and talk about their beliefs. And they feel good about themselves. But not to the bank. Do you understand? Now, the assumption that your mother and father is not sharecroppers is problematic. Because you're operating with the assumption that your mother and father, and you love them, and sure we love our mothers and fathers, right? So we make assumptions that we're heritable, don't we? Mm-hmm. Don't we?
Yes.
Well, give me the law book. Give me this cheat. I'm going to show you something. And again, while we're here at the House of Reawakening Mind, and also while you get a flash drive, and it's enough to keep people busy for 15 years, 20.
Yeah. Yeah.
We started off with 10. When Hassan did his thing, now they got 20, 25 years of study. Really? And even then, they may not be done. But they got a lot of tools. You understand? All they got to do is use them. Go ahead. Now I want you to use the big one. Okay. Now that's good and handy. I want you to use the big one. Come on.
Page 640 of the Black's Law Dictionary, 4th edition, page 640, as cheat. In feudal law, as cheat is an obstruction of the course of descent.
The natural course of descent.
And consequent determination of the tenure by some unforeseen contingency, in which case the land naturally reverts back by a kind of reversion to the original grantor or lord of the fee.
There you go. So persons with brands are not descendable, and it already reverts to the corporate state unless you have in place, an adverse claim and a trust and are qualified heir to receive the estate. Now, if you're Smith, Jones, and Johnson, you're not descendable. If you're of Asiatic African descent, for those are nom de guerre, they belong to the European operators that operating on North America. And if your mother's Smith, Jones, and Johnson, they ain't got it either. It belongs to the corporate state. Are we clear? Clear. That's why you nationalize, because in law, your connection to the exercise of what is called the common law is based on your traditions and customs association with your ancient mothers and fathers from time immemorial. That is derived in common law from the ancient principle of honor your mothers and your fathers, that your days may be longer upon the earth land which the Lord thy God has given you. If you're not in the honor of your ancient mothers and fathers, you cannot argue a state. It does not stand with you, because the status and the state are equals. This is why the Dutch masters put their family names on the people of the land to steal their estates. These are established facts, they're not opinions. People thinking that because some generations pass and they don't have to deal with it, well, that's their mistake, because the law don't change. So therefore, being an heir to the estate, it is to your advantage intelligently to take that property and put it in a loyal title and put it in trust as quickly as yesterday. So that any attempt at coming at it, all you got to do is present it, and what it does, it stops any proceedings. It is an estoppel without them permitting you. It is an estoppel by nature of the existence of the trust. And it's because it's private, you don't have to file crap with them. You just put them on notice when they come at you. Difference between public and private. You need to understand what that is. What made this stuff private is the hypothecation action on their part. Yeah, well, there it is.
Peace. So I had a property. Well, I had a property. Had put it in a loyal title. It was taken. Now it's up for sale. So all I have to do is put it into trust, and
fraud has no statute of limitation, does it?
Okay, and I can just say that.
That means you can go back, can't you? All you got to do is have the right argument, don't you? And you certainly have the intelligence. So ain't we here in the House of Reawakening Minds?
Yes.
So what do? This is what we do. We start analyzing, just like you're doing right now. You get the sisters together, those sister circles, and y'all discuss this thing, and y'all work this thing out, and guess what? Y'all come and tell our sons what to do, then we do what we do, and we ain't got to pray on it. You just laid hands upon it. In the mind.
And the same thing, there's another sister where her mother passed, gave her the property, but it wasn't in...
Thought she did.
Right, and it wasn't in her name.
Now, this is what we want to do. We want to stop assuming things that are natural. when we're in an unnatural platform. We must recognize that we're in an unnatural platform. The assumption that you're descendable puts you in a comfort zone that's mentally there, not factually there. What we want to do is change those dynamics by giving us, ourselves, the responsibility to look at things for what they really are. It takes the same breath to tell the truth that it takes to tell a lie. Therefore, truth is not difficult. It's will. Now, so, let's look at this. 1913, Woodrow Wilson met with the Jesuit order, members of the Circle Church and the Chancery, and the bankers of England under the secret treaty of Verona off Jekyll Island, off Georgia, sold their portion of what you would call appearance of sovereign activity by treaty law at North America, because the shell was broken. Now, in other words, it was bankrupt. But they did have assets. That ain't theirs, but they had assets that they're still administering. So the necessity for them to have any what you call fungibility was to convert the allodial titles to mortgages and deeds and do the double bookkeeping that they've been doing since then. Now, you see the double stock trust they talk about in House Joint Resolution 192? But it's all on us. Meanwhile, we're sitting around talking about our beliefs and hallelujah to you and everything, singing gospel songs. And they're singing all the way to the bank on our estates, including the houses that we're accusing to belong to God, mortgaged by them. And the major contractors was even them in our so-called communities. But we're deep in beliefs. Do you understand the problem here? Meanwhile, we're suffering that we want to have marches and meetings and complaints rather than deal with what's really these issues. Because because we got to prove that we're not of the world. Fine. That's how the world, anyone that don't use their intelligence to solve problems is no better than animals in the field and are treated accordingly. And we just haven't gotten over ourselves that idol God worship hasn't worked for us very well. So now, we're here at the House of Reawakening Minds, trying to fix things for real. So the first thing we want to do is take our shoes off at the door, do it psychologically. You understand?
Yes.
And whosoever will, let them come. Whosoever will, let them hear. Because the truth is available to anybody that wants it. If they sought, they would have found it. It's not a secret, that's why we give you documents. Right? Yeah, but the black leader said if we march stronger this time, they're going to give us 5 sandwiches. Yeah. The only ones that makes money is the airplane companies and the trains and the buses and the vendors. And the best thing our people get is little vending stands that they pay for out there selling little Negro trinkets and incense and call it success. They're full of doo-doo. Like Dan Diz says, we used to have hotels, ain't got none. We used to have mom and pop stores all over the place, ain't got none. You know why? Because we want to be civil rights guys. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
Now, so what we're saying here at the House of Reawakening Minds, with all due respect, we're trying to get real. We're looking logistically at the real component parts. We want us to stop dealing with emotion. Let's look at the component parts and we can solve this thing. What you want to do, you want to come together, come from council, become a consular position. It's called diversity. Article 3, Section 2 of the Constitution. These principles all over the world. Issue your dispensation from your order, because that's how it operates in nation states, etc., even though you've been subdued, and seal it. And when they make a challenge, you present it, and guess what it is? It's the best estoppel in the world. Because you are the heir of the world's largest estate. You just ain't been speaking up because you didn't have confidence in yourself. You didn't believe in your own nativity. You only believed in his. So again, they keep giving him jurisdiction and complaining because he takes it. So we redundantly go over certain things to build your confidence, to give you confidence in yourself. We give you documents to show you how things work.
Not for you.
How things work. So the protocols are obvious. We tell you certain things they do in their operations. So things are obvious. So we don't have to keep telling you every little thing. It becomes obvious what you do. Are we clear? Yeah. Fraud has no statute of limitations. Now what you want to do is you want to name the parties that made a claim on your estate. Right? Do not talk corporate entities. Corporate entities are dead. They can't do anything. Don't consider suing Santa Claus because he didn't give you the bike. You better consider the persons who own the foundation that took the finance from you, from your account, and named the living man or woman that cashed those checks. You start talking about the corporate entities, you just gave them a mask and now they can hide forever. Are we clear? Clear. Always deal with the living man or woman. They only create corpses so that when you start punching, you're punching the dead and not the living. And understand, Allah is the God of the living and not of the dead. Are we clear? Clear. Now, do you want to be in the book of life? It's called nationalization all over the world. It's called honoring your mothers and your fathers. It's called the book of life. Mm-hmm. That's what it's really called.
And another quick question. So am I correct in understanding that using the reversioner is
in the nature of it? This is just a short. Now I'll show you another version of this. This is just a short, just to, to present the cognizance of how we should be thinking. Because our people, because this is certain things that we do are just simply to establish concept. That's all. If the concept is there, and we want you to be able to do things on your own. Are we clear? Okay. And that's for anybody. And so certain things we do is for concept alone. And this is why some things we do, like we'll give you other instruments or go into other parts of history and law, and then we'll come back to certain things that we presented you before to show you that everything is relative. But it has to become cognate to you. So we don't want you to listen to us and to move on what we say. We want you to just consider what we say, use your intelligence, add or subtract. But understand the concept. So therefore, 2 and 2 is 4. 1 and 1 and 1 and 1 is 4. 2 and 1 and 1 is 4. 2 and 1 half and 1 half and 1 and 1 half and 1 half is 4. Once you understand the protocols become obvious once you understand what you're dealing with. Which is why we're redundant on certain things, so that we don't get caught in the gray area, because we keep trying to think this stuff is mysterious. It's not mysterious. It's common sense with common law. But we have been trained not to use common sense. Therefore, common law doesn't apply to such persons. That's why they call them people of color, which means artificial persons, dealing with artificial law. They're hiding a reality. They're hiding from responsibility. They deal with BS Dorf that they gave them, and they won't release it, and therefore the European controls the narrative. Therefore, he controls your estate. It's not hard whatsoever. And so we're trying to get people to recognize that culture's in the language, to change your language, to start fixing it. You know, and if you want to be lazy about it or abbreviate, good, that leaves an opening for them and they keep taking advantage of you. It's simple, it's not complex. Really, not at all. Now, here's another version of it, see? Same thing, reversion. Now, so I, and then it would be your attribute, right? So read that out loud, go ahead. Read it with authority.
I, Atia Kirkland Bey, the living sentient woman, repudiate and rebut all hypothecation claims made by the foreign and misrepresented.
Say it a little louder. You on a mic. Come on. Talk like you're in there.
Misrepresented persons doing business as or associated with United States Incorporated. I do therefore publicly and privately proclaim and declare my divine and natural rights to my corporeal and incorporeal hereditaments and affirm notice and claim reversion to my estate. Therefore, I, Atia Kirkland Bey, the living sentient woman, the rightful heir, am not lost at sea, and I affirm and declare my right of reversion of estate. And therefore, I make no claim with respect to the title and misrepresented capitalized name of straw,
man
of straw, and non de jure, being a title, and the spurious creations of the foreign de facto United States corporate operators, actors, and owners, and I surrender and assign any and all reversionary interests to the foreign, privately owned United States and its subsidiaries for full acquittance, discharge, settlement, and closure of my reliance. Title 12 U.S.C. 95A, Part 2. I assume no liabilities or debts, however contrived among its corporate associates, and I do not consent to stand as surety for the foreign, private, and for-profit United States Incorporated and U.S. Corporation Company, entity owners, directors, or their administrators, nor do I stand as surety for its subsidiaries or its associates at any point or moment in time.
Same principle expanded, isn't it? You're just closing more doors, right? So this is what they're operating. All persons whose rights, liberties have been hypothecated are standing as surety to back their private debt on the guise of a public forum, on the guise that you are their stock citizen. So when you nationalize, you're automatically disengaging that assumption. And you're claiming your estate, and it's documented, therefore it is a what? It's a fiduciary request as an heir. So you're telling the fiduciary that you're competent. You want your sandwiches. They're misusing them. Now what happens is, once this starts getting circulated in any public venue on notice, anyone, even nation states on the other side of the water, if they got them derivatives, they're dead paper. They're not redeemable. If you know what happens is, so that it don't crash the market, they sell them and try to hide it while selling them. But they got to dump them. So what happens is all of those private instruments start coming back. So what happens is that the members of the Circle Church have to buy them and create a false market for them because they can't let them circulate in the public because it will collapse. This is what's happening to the United States as we speak. You need to know that.
They call it qualitative easing. Right?
Exactly, that's what's happening. They're buying the instruments and storing them in warehouses. Nobody wants them. Are we clear? Clear. So what's happening, you're getting ready to go into hyperinflation. Are we clear? Clear. This is why Europeans, so-called wealthy Europeans, are denouncing their U.S. citizenship and have been taking their funds offshore And this is why they did House Joint Resolution 2748. No, 2748, yeah, I think like that. And they're going after all those accounts. This is what's going on in the real world while we're sitting around marching and praying. When you should be nationalizing, setting up a trust, getting ready for this crash. That's unavoidable. Well, we're clear. And while these things take place, it's in the interest of everybody to fix this thing. Now you understand why Trump is trying to restore the republic in spite of everything, even though he's a Knights Templar. And the order of Christ that they call the Templars is the circle church that's actually been creating all these problems. So now let's look at this real quick, and let's go through this real quick, y'all. And this is redundant, but we want to see how obvious stuff is once you understand how things operate. And we talking protocols, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Now, these are fundamental truths. All right, as a matter of fact, you got the mic, so go ahead and do your thing. And read directly read with authority.
Commentary on the letter issued by Pope Francis, Civil Orders, the original and de jure Constitution and government for the United States of America at North America, having a Republican form of government set forth and established at Article 4, Section 4, stands as the supreme law of the land. That organic constitution was altered by acts of misprision and was secretly overthrown and converted into a foreign, privately owned, and deemed for-profit corporation in the year 1871. See the Act of Congress, 1871. That said misprison, derived and foreign feudal law entity born of treason, was styled as the United States Corporation Company, which is now commonly referred to as the United States Democracy. The foreign and privately owned entity deceptively created by acts of sedation in all its many states of entities or its other licensed and associated corporate franchises. Or is that franchise?
Were and are ultimately
and factually owned by the Vatican, being members of the Roman Curie. This politically and socially subdued truth, in fact, is actually the veiled foundation and source of the functioning jurisdictional powers that gave and still gives the Pope of Rome or the Vatican and bishopric.
That's all your collective clergy as a body.
Bishopric, the colorably valid and affirmable authority over the entity, U.S. democracy, and United States corporation, and also jurisdiction over those subordinate associated entities as expressed and executed via the impacting letter. This letter, or edict titled Civil Orders, was posted on August 19, 2015, but if this said posting is correct, the measured time reports that it was apparently sent to President Obama over a year ago, being July 4th of 2014. The Pope's letter not only confirms that the United States, U.S., is operating under a corporation, but that the Pope's letter also affirms that General Carter Ham will be heading up the new republic when it is announced. The announcement will be part of what is known as the Nisara announcements. This current page was working for the light anyway. Don't waste your time on the political circus concerning the U.S. election. I don't expect to see one. When Nisara is announced, the new interim president becomes the president of the new republic for 6 months, after which free elections are held. We can then elect the interim president for another 4 years or elect someone else. The content of the letter below is pretty self-explanatory. You may want to check out the attachment, Mr. T.
Read this.
Source, www.
Right, read it. Now, this is up, now it's big. Look on the board. You can probably see it better.
Pope Francis sends Obama powerful letter via attorney on July 4, 2014. Civil orders July 4, 2014. Issued to all members of the domestic police forces, U.S. Marshal Service, the Provost Marshal, members of the American Bar Association, and the American Armed Services. These organic American states of the Union, known as the United States of America, major, exercising plenary civil power upon the land, hereby appoint General Carter F. Ham to lead and command the Grand Army of the Republic and its successors under the guidance of the Joint Chiefs of Staff and with their full support. Should it become necessary to suppress commercial mercenary forces operating under the guise of being federal government agencies, including but not limited to the Department of Homeland Security, the Federal Emergency Management Administration, the Internal Revenue Service, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, etc. General Ham shall assume immediate command and control of all armed forces and services owed to the United States of America, major, stationed in North America, and shall join them under his command as the Grand Army of the Republic. All forces of air, land, and sea are to be employed. Any cost or loss suffered as a result of deployment of the Grand Army of the Republic shall be charged as stipulated prior. All efforts shall be made by the Grand Army of the Republic to spare life and property while undertaking any action whatsoever within the states of the Union without exception. The Grand Army of the Republic is uniquely enabled by these orders to operate on the land of the 50 organic states for the purposes of securing the lives and property of the American states and American state citizens. The Grand Army of the Republic is not a foreign army and is composed primarily of American state citizens. If required to take field position, the local commanders shall make every effort to communicate the basis of their authority and the reasons for their presence on American state soil to ensure a prompt cessation of hostilities and a widespread understanding of the usurpations and acts of fraud which have led to any conflict. All parties must be brought to understand the nature of the federal government, the limitations of its authority, and their own obligation to act in favor of the organic states of the Union. The Grand Army of the Republic shall continue to operate under General Order 100, known as the Lever Code, extant from the pen of the last Republic President, Abraham Lincoln. No orders, executive or otherwise, issued by Barack H. Obama pretending authority on the land of the American state while operating as President of the United States Corporation, nor as the President of the United States of America, minor, are owed any performance by the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Ham, or any ordinary. All plainly stated grants of contractual authority evident in the Constitution for the United States of America remain in place, subject to good faith performance of the company obligations of and treaties. Mr. Obama is the President. Of a governmental services corporation under contract to provide stipulated services to the organic states and is on their payroll. He otherwise acts as a foreign dignitary representing the United States of America minor. In neither of these capacities is he allowed any general authority to impose upon American state citizens. Any granted authority to impose upon American state citizens, endanger American state property, or command mercenary forces on American state soil, however veiled as federal civilian service agencies. We require the Joint Chiefs of Staff and General Ham to commence measures to disarm federal civilian agency personnel and to seize control of the vast stockpiles of arms which have been improperly amassed by the Department of Homeland Security, FEMA, and other agencies employed by the United States. The only federal agency allowed free egress on the land of the American states is the U.S. Marshals Service, and then only when their personnel are engaged in their duty to protect the U.S. mail and sworn to act as constitutional officers. All other federal agency personnel are limited to unarmed service until further notice. We direct the Joint Chiefs of Staff to communicate these first two general civil orders directly to Mr. Obama, the members of the U.S. Congress, the administrators of all federal agencies, the members of the Supreme Court, and those acting as governors to compel their rapid understanding and cooperation. Any expense or damage incurred by these organic states or any American state citizens as a result of actions undertaken by any federal agency personnel acting as armed mercenaries on American soil will be understood as the result of violent crimes committed against the peaceful inhabitants of the land and will incur immediate judgment, liquidating the assets of the International Monetary Fund and the Federal Reserve in payment of the stipulated reparations. Such crimes shall also be considered contract default, increasing the public debt subject to bounty. Any and all corporate officers of the United States or any successor organization inheriting federal service contracts who support, condone, or promote such crimes against the American states or against American state citizens shall be subject to arrest and prosecution for commercial and violent crimes. Wow. All foreign officials operating as elected or appointed officials of the United States of America minor who support, condone, or promote such crimes against the American states or against American state citizens shall be subject to arrest, confiscation of their assets, and deportation to Puerto Rico, Guam, or such other states as may be willing to receive them. Such foreign officials include members of the American and British Bar Associations who were licensed to act as privateers against the interests of the American state and the American state citizens from 1845 to 2013 in flagrant breach of trust. All such licenses are now extinguished. Members of the bar associations are required
to cease. Members of the bar association
to cease and desist assaults against the American states and American state citizens and shall be subject to arrest, confiscation, and deportation. I read that already. In so much as corporate officers operating the United States of America Incorporated in the United States have contrived under conditions of fraud and semantic deceit to revenue the estates of the American states and living American state citizens to the foreign jurisdiction of the United States of America minor. They are found guilty of capital crimes, including acts of fraud and treason committed between 1933 and 1945, and are condemned posthumously in so much as elected officials operating the United States of America minor have similarly committed war crimes against the American states and their peaceful inhabitants during the same time period. They stand condemned posthumously. No enforcement upon any American state or American state citizen is owed as a result of any act of any Congress operating as the sovereign government of the United States of America minor, nor as the board of directors or board of trustees of any incorporated entity whatsoever. All those estates and estates.
Lowercase and uppercase, you see, right?
Yeah.
Keep on.
Erroneously believed to represent the American states and American state citizens, and which were conveyed by fraud and legal deceit to the United States of America minor, and more recently to the city-state of the United Nations, are revenued without exception to the geographically defined American states and the American state citizens, where they shall remain in perpetuity as assets belonging to the rightful and lawful beneficiaries. All legal fiction entities, however structured and named after the American states and American state citizens, are returned to them in their control, free and clear of any debt, promise, encumbrances, or obligation alleged against them as a result of false claims made in their behalf by officers of the United States of America Incorporated and the United States Incorporated, or by any foreign officials operating the United States of America minor or the United Nations city-state falsely claiming to represent them or to have jurisdiction over them. We note that the current circumstance is in part the result of criminal acts engaged in 150 years ago, which resulted in the commercial enslavement of African Americans who were similarly claimed as chattels backing United U.S. government debt in the wake of the Civil War. Despite every act of abolition and declaration of prohibition against both peonage and slavery, it has been the policy of the U.S. government to enslave its citizens and to operate as a rogue state among the nations of the world. Instead of freeing African Americans, the sum total result of the Civil War was to vastly expand public sector ownership of slaves, giving rise to the outrageous and improper claims that have been made against the American states and the American state citizens that we are dealing with today. It is uniquely fitting that the Grand Army of the Republic is recalled to settle this circumstance in favor of the people. Attachments, civil orders, Anna Marie
Wilhelmina, I'm Sophia Ritzinger, Ron Ritzenstein, Von Redfield,
Are the attorney in service to His Holiness Pope Francis documents related? The United States isn't a country, it's a corporation. The Hidden Vatican Crown Empire.
So,
it doesn't exist
now,
in name only.
All right. Now, no, listen. Thank you all for coming out to the House of Reawakening Minds. But the deal of it is within the letter from the Pope to Obama, you also recognize protocols. You also recognize that the straw man, you don't need to be going through no process. You need to claim your nationality. You're the geographically defined Americans. So if you're not nationalized, you're not the geographically defined Americans.
At all.
So the Pope's telling you, because you know your so-called black leaders ain't going to tell you. Because he owns them. You get the point? In other words, the protocols are obvious. Anyway, thank you all for coming out to the House of Reawakening Minds. Come on, Dr. Nailah.
What?
Final announcements?
Final, yeah. Oh, sorry. Final announcements, yeah. First of all, thank you all for coming out tonight. I want to just, those of you who were here last week for Father Hannibal's awesome metaphysical teaching, we want you to know that he will be back on the 24th, which is a Saturday, 6 p.m. on the 24th. This will be recorded but not live streamed. So those of you listening, unfortunately by Facebook, this will not be a Facebook Live event. We're going to go into some deep stuff. So if you really want to be here, you're going to have to come to the House of Reawakening Minds. And then on the 25th of this month, we have Awakening Dialogue, and our special guest from the is Patsy P.J. Cannon. We want everybody to come out.
Center for Blissful Living.
She's from the Center for Blissful Living. The sister Zeke, she's New Orleans born and bred, and she's an awesome sister, metaphysical, spiritual, and funny, and a vegan chef. She'll be here at 3 o'clock on the 25th. We want you to come out for that. We also want you to, no, do not put that camera on me. We also want you to register for the astrology workshop. How many are excited? I mean, we got a little preview of that today, those of us who were here earlier, and we want to make sure that you get the full complement of that teaching of Hassan's, Brother Hassan's teaching. The spots are filling up. We want you to register before the 21st of April. Of course, we want you to register hopefully
by the 14th.
By the 14th, because we're going to close registration down on the 14th. But we want you to be a part of that. And let me see, we're going to have Sister Rosmariah B-Bay next week, and then the following Friday, because we have, I'm talking y'all,
Islam.
Y'all being loud, I'm still giving announcements. On the following Friday, the 5th Friday, we're going to have Brother Ms. Ryan from, who is Sister Rosmariah B-Bay's son.
Yes.
He will be teaching here on the 5th Friday, so we want you to tune in. And let me see, last but not least, in 1 hour.
Yeah, let me say that. Let me say all that.
Okay.
All right. I got you.
about 1 hour, it will be the solar return for both Mother Nailah and Abundance Child. So let's all give a warm round of applause and a happy solar return for Mother Nailah and Abundance Child. Everybody give it up. Come on. I think this makes number 63. I'm saying that for a good
You're supposed to
reason.
say 36.
No, well, I'm saying a 9 for good reason. But I'm saying why I'm saying this though, because with the number 9,
That's right.
okay, you know, I made a point earlier about 0 and 9 being the same thing, but that's more of a, you know, that cipher and that cycling. So there's power there in that number 9. So everybody do your thing, and that's about it.
That's about it as far as the argument.
We still on.
What's going on?
Thank you. Thank you for that. What's going on this week? Nothing, but what's going on next week? Everything? So hopefully we'll get you all to come out for the 24th.
What time?
The 24th is 6 p.m. That's Father Hannibal. And we want to, you know, that was deep last week. It's going to be deeper because we're not going to live stream that. Mm-hmm. So we want you to come. You're going to have to be here.
So you said the 24th
on the 24th at 6 p.m., which is a Saturday. And then that following day, we have that awesome Awakening Dialogue here with our sister, Patsy P.J. Cannon, who's coming by way of, I guess, New Orleans, by way of D.C. Owings Mills. Yeah. So we're looking forward, and we want you all to come out and be a part of that.
This class in Philly tomorrow.
Yeah, oh, it is James Watson Bay classes?
Yeah.